70 updates available. I just updated yesterday.
Oh, you ain't gonna
What, you're
believe this.
running Neon today, Joe?
No.
That's the way Neon
22.
is. It's like 250 updates every other day, you know?
Mint 22.
All right, so I need to put the notes up. So let me do that here.
Well,
You want me to wait to put something in it first?
Well, I got to get them on the website because we're already.
I guess I haven't mentioned today that, it's hot in Texas.
is it? Why would it be hot in Texas?
It's kind of one of those things. It's like saying I run Arch. You kind of have to say it.
Is
I'm doing
anybody
my
running Arch
laptops
right
now,
now?
and that's it. It was nice. It was fun, but it was a huge distraction all the time.
What was?
Using Arch on this machine.
Oh.
Because it's because of the options that you have.
Why do I feel the urge to hit install updates?
It's that same urge that once makes you want to like run your car off in a ditch.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is.
Do it,
I
cowboy.
wonder what would happen if I drove off this bridge. Yeah.
Or like when you see them making a new ramp and it just goes up to nowhere.
That's weird.
Got a freeway that they built about half of, and they had all the land procured and everything ready, and for some reason the citizens wanted it stopped, and so it stopped right where it was, and then that land just turned into a greenway that everyone was using, and so they finally just gave up trying to turn it into a freeway and just left it as a greenway.
What's a greenway?
Greenway is where they have walking paths and sort of a park, but only a little strip park.
The right wingers don't like it called highway anymore because they don't want to talk about being high.
If you want someone to rant about right wingers, you've come to the right person. Because I don't know has anybody been watching the news in the UK?
Oh,
We are streaming.
I thought you guys had that all fixed. Come on.
Didn't you guys have some more riots?
Yes, we did, and it is just the worst scum of humanity that have come out. Taking advantage of the deaths of 3 little children for their own things. I'll talk about it in the Wanderings, but I may well get heated.
I've heard enough to know that you're
I don't
right.
know anything about this.
I mean, why blame foreigners if the person is a citizen? No, you're just picking an ethnic group and saying it's their fault.
And here's the irony: he was Rwandan, so he's from sub-Saharan Africa. He's Christian.
Oh, you're talking about the stabbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And yet our mosque has to have security outside. I've seen mosques that I know of being attacked. A police station's been ransacked. Or why? Because we don't like them fucking Muslims. Because, they stab our children. Well, no, they don't. Number one. And to group every single person into the actions of an individual is stupid anyway. But the individual that has been arrested is none of those things. He's not an immigrant. He's not a Muslim. He's
Canada's had some problems with that. With Sikhs being attacked for being turban heads.
Yeah.
Even if he was,
they don't know the difference between a Sikh and
even
a Muslim.
Even if he was, that still doesn't make it right.
Exactly.
Yeah. But this is like compound stupidity. This is like what you really want to do is cause trouble, be Islamophobic, throw some Paki slurs at people, make 2.6 million Muslims in this country scared. That's what you want to do. The facts are irrelevant.
Yeah.
And this isn't me having the rant. This is the pre-rant. So
the rant comes
later. It's warming up.
Yeah.
All right, is everybody dialed in?
Are we ready to do Audacity?
We'll see.
Yeah, Mint 22 upgraded my Audacity
Yeah, no, it sucks.
from 2.4.2
Yeah, it's
to
not.
3.4.2,
And it's
and
horrible.
it is pretty bad.
I don't have a problem with 3.4, but when you're using 3.6 and you're expecting it to work right and it just goes blank on you in the middle of your editing and recording, that's just lovely. But if you want the fix, you've got, well, we'll talk about this in a little bit.
Okay, well, let's do some countdowns here. 3, 2, 1, record. Well, that's enough for Tony. I don't know why we're still doing 25 seconds, but it always seemed to be based on
It's-
Tony.
It's actually, it is good to have that much time. It
yeah,
really is.
I agree. Because sometimes you get somebody grabbing something in the middle of that, and
Yeah.
it doesn't, that way you can work
Okay.
around it.
Well, I didn't have any traffic at all, so I don't think it did any good.
Really, that kind of, that noise reduction doesn't work for that kind of noise.
Vehicles, things like
Yeah,
that. It works for
it's more
constant noise.
right. Hums and
Okay,
hisses.
we
and-
we got zeros to do, guys.
Yeah, let's do it, Moss. Hurry up. What's taking you so long?
Shut up, Bill. 3, 2, 1, 0.
Zero.
Zero.
Sound like shit.
Oh, I am going to soundbite that so
Oh,
hard.
who's hosting?
I'll do it. I ain't done it in a while.
Okie dokie.
Oh.
If anything happens, blame Audacity.
I'm only showing
That's
the
going
left
on the
channel.
soundboard. I'm going to let you know that, Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. And I do have it in the, well, I've got it in all of the recordings, don't I? Yeah.
No,
We'll
where
do
he says,
that.
shut up, Bill.
Yeah. We might even put that on the next
Going on
cloud
the
to use
soundboard.
that over and over. Shut up, Bill. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up, Bill. Shut up, Bill. To your right. Shut up, Bill.
All right,
Okay.
guys. Whoever's running the show, we need to
Oh,
start
I
the
got
show.
this. I think. What is this? 4:43.
We're only 15 minutes late. No biggie.
What else you got to do, Moss?
I got to get out of this chair because this chair hurts my butt. Yeah.
Stand up then.
Can't do it.
Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 443. This is episode 443.5. Recorded on Sunday, August 4th, 2024.
Feeling the heat. I'm Joe.
Ready for school. I'm Moss.
Oh, jeez. Where do I get these people? Willing to-
I'm having a problem, though my mute button is also messing with my screen.
Willing to pay real money for a back rub, I'm Bill.
Overworked and underpaid, but running on girders. It's a reference if you are Scottish and watching
Which
the
you are
video
not.
cast, you'll get. I'm Majid.
And conspiring with our future AI overlords, I'm Eric.
It's going to be a rough one, folks. Warning you now. Please remember, if you want to follow along with our discussions, a link to the full show notes is in the show's description, and that is always true. First up in the news, Linux Mint 22, codenamed Wilma, released. Switzerland now requires all government software to be open source. Oh, good on them. Intel suffers stock losses. Intel admits to damage on 13th and 14th gen processors. Fun2 calls it quits. And Serpent OS makes its first appearance. In security and privacy, Secure Boot is broken on over 200 computers from 5 major vendors. New Android malware drains bank accounts and wipes your device afterwards. and TG Rat attacks Linux. Then in our wanderings, Bill loves the image. Joe works too hard. Moss does upgrades. Majid sells stuff and rants. And Eric wants to become one with AI. He's become our AI correspondent. In our innards section, we talk Mint 22, and finally the feedback and a couple suggestions. First up, the news. Eric?
All right. So we have Linux Mint 22 Wilma released, and this is from the Mint blog and OMG Ubuntu via Londoner. Thank you, Londoner. On Thursday, July 25th, the stable version of Linux Mint 22, codenamed Wilma, was officially released in the usual 3 desktop environments of Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE. As always, it is a long-term support release which will be supported until 2029. This major update is built on Ubuntu 24.04 LTS and sees Linux Mint 22 inherit big updates to underlying packages, libraries, tooling, and core technology stacks. There's also a new Linux kernel, 6.8, and a fresh set of graphics drivers. Wayland support has been improved but is still considered experimental. It is a notable break with past tradition that the distro plans to release new kernel updates every 6 months through the Ubuntu Hardware Enablement Stack, also known as HWE. Mint 22 ships with a new version of the Cinnamon desktop, 6.2, featuring new options, a suite of new and improved apps, plus a few downgrades and removals, and makes some notable security changes, like no more guest login by default. On the audio front, Pipewire is now used as the default sound server. Pipewire delivers low latency, improved performance, and better compatibility with a wider range of Bluetooth devices, apps, and online services than Pulse Audio, which it replaces. Any unused language packs other than English and the language you select during installation are removed after installation. This change reduces the disk space a new installation requires, which is a nice low-level improvement. Other changes in Linux Mint 22 include guest sessions are disabled by default, translations optimized to take up less disk space, 22 new desktop backgrounds, themes updated to support GTK4, all apps using libsoup2 have been migrated to libsoup3, better HIDPI or high DPI support in Plymouth and the login screen, shutdown timeout reduced to 10 seconds from I believe it was 30 before. As you'd expect, there are lots of bug fixes, performance buffs, and translation tweaks bundled in this update. While invisible and hard to screenshot, those are welcome. The Cinnamon 6.2 desktop is the heart of Linux Mint 22. While it offers no showy new features, there are lots of smaller quality improvements baked into to help enhance its usability and make it easier and more fun to use. You can now organize Nemo actions like file manager scripts using a new dedicated tool. The new Nemo Actions layout editor supports ordering and sorting, dividers, grouping actions into submenus, editing their text labels, and changing the icons shown for an action. The corner bar applet, far right bottom of the panel, now lets you choose which action is triggered when holding the Shift key on the button. Show desktop, show desklets, show the workspace switcher, or show the window picker. Mint menu now has a science category. User applet has an option to show user profile pick on the panel. Power applet, more precise at reporting battery state. Startup applications now shows search bar when adding entries. Screen lock delay offers 5 and 10-second options now. Cinnamon Spices add-ons now support configurable key bindings. Keyboard shortcuts panel gains a search feature. Active VPN connections denoted by padlock on network icon. OSK picks up a toggle to disable the OSK. The software manager hides unverified Flatpak listings by default, even if you explicitly search for something. You can choose to see and install unverified Flatpaks using the toggle newly added to the new expanded software manager settings panel. Mint cautions against this. A warning text informs you of the potential security risks from opting in. Elsewhere, Linux Mint now maintains its own deb package of the Thunderbird email client. This is because upstream, Ubuntu switched to a Thunderbird snap and made the Thunderbird deb in its repos a transition package that basically just installs the snap. 2 new apps make their debut in Linux 22. The first is a new X app named GNOME Online Accounts GTK. This wraps the latest GOA functionality from GNOME 46 in a vanilla GTK4 user interface that fits in with the rest of the Cinnamon desktop. The second is a new pre-installed web app for Element, a cloud-based client for the Matrix chat platform, and hard-coded to load the official Linux Mint Matrix channel on launch. This replaces HexChat, which was an IRC client, now removed, to provide real-time support. In an unexpected move, Mint 22 downgrades some of its pre-installed apps to older versions, not something most of us would expect when installing a newer version of a Linux distribution. Why has this happened? Most of the latest versions of these apps adopt GTK4 or libadwaita for their UI, which Linux Mint dislikes, feeling it impacts the look, feel, and integration of apps with the rest of the non-GNOME desktop like Cinnamon. They stand out like a sore thumb, basically. As a result, many apps have been downgraded to older GTK3 builds. Apps downgraded to older versions than the ones present in Ubuntu 24.04 specifically include Celluloid, GNOME Calculator, Simple Scan, Disk Usage Analyzer, System Monitor, GNOME Calendar, and the Archive Extraction Compression Tool File Roller. Apart from the above, here are the other changes to default apps in Linux Mint 22. Warpinator adds a restart item to its menu. Nemo has a JXL thumbnailer. Pix, that's PIX, now supports opening of JXL images. Sticky Notes lets you choose the default screen position. Timeshift, Timeshift asks for confirmation when deleting backups. Xed, text editor, gains a keyboard shortcut to toggle the minimap. For upgrading, the instructions are if you're running the beta, you don't need to upgrade. Use the update manager to apply available updates. Upgrade instructions from Linux Mint 21.3 have also been posted, and there is a link in the show notes. There's also a link to detailed instructions, as well as a link to what's new in Linux Mint 22, and a link to the release notes for Linux Mint 22. So if any of you guys, I know, Bill, you were definitely waiting for this. You wanted to support some newer hardware, and we're having some issues with the older kernel. So have you had a better experience with that?
Yeah, the biggest thing was I wanted first-class support for the Focusrite devices, which, to be fair, it was working before, but now I've got an actual kernel module that speaks directly to the device. Arguable whether I'm getting a better experience, but it, I don't know. Pipewire seems to have cleaned up some of the audio problems I was having. But, and we'll talk more about this later, but some of the software that's on and this is more of an Ubuntu thing than it is a Mint thing, but like the versions of Audacity that we're getting now, and I don't know, it might just be growing pains and just a little bit of initial friction from getting updated software and having to get it all up and working to get a show running in that. It can be stressful in that, but I've not had any serious problems, as in crashes or anything real important not working. And I say it like that because you could be forgiven for installing Mint 22 and not really knowing that you've got anything new because, from an aesthetic perspective, there's not much to be said about it. Everything seems to be kind of under the hood, uh, which is probably a good idea as far as Mint's concerned. But yeah,
It's kind of their MO, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they just don't
it
they don't
is.
rock the boat very much. So
Yeah, I think we'll get into quite a bit of this in the innards, won't we?
yep, absolutely.
So I think probably move on. Really.
And Moss
I
is losing his mind. So
I've stepped on enough tongues already. It said that they had input element, and that does not count if you're doing an upgrade. You have to do a complete install to get the element being automatically installed. I did not get
What
that.
Moss is talking about is the element chat to talk to the Linux Mint people, because prior to this release, it's been an IRC thing to talk to
And
the
it did not
developers.
remove hex chat to do the upgrade, which
Yeah, if you're doing the upgrade, you don't get the new element thing automatically, and it doesn't remove your hex chat. If you nuke and pave, you get. But the interesting thing, we'll talk more about it. But the interesting thing is, it's not an app. They actually used their own little web app tool to make essentially a web app out of Firefox to the element page for Linux Mint. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Moving on. Go ahead, Joe. And you're muted. Hello, Hey, it's cool.
Hey, look,
though.
Bill, you called it, right?
I
mean, we're
did.
just sort of working through here.
It's all good. I warned everybody. What'd you do, Joe?
Joe,
Mintcast
you're
is working
muted.
fine.
I think he knows by now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hey.
Ah, that was Video Ninja.
Oh yeah, that's become the real. That's become the easy way.
All right. Switzerland now requires all government software to be open source. This is from ZDNet via Londoner. Several European countries are betting on open source software. In the United States, it all moved. In the United States, not so much. In the latest news from across the Atlantic, Switzerland has taken a major step forward with its federal law on the use of electronic means for the fulfillment of government tasks. This groundbreaking legislation mandates using open source software in the public sector. This new law requires all public bodies to disclose the source code of software developed by or for them unless third party rights or security concerns prevent it. This public money, public code approach aims to enhance government operations, transparency, security, and efficiency. Making this move wasn't easy. It began in 2011 when the Swiss Federal Supreme Court published its court application Open Justitia under an OSS license. The proprietary legal software company Weblaw wasn't happy about this. There were heated political and legal fights for more than a decade. Finally, the MBAG was passed in 2023. Now, the law not only allows the release of OSS by the Swiss government or its contractors, but also requires the code to be released under an open source license, unless the rights of third parties or security related reasons would exclude or restrict this. Professor Dr. Matthias Sturmer, head of the Institute of Public Sector Transformation at the Bern University of Applied Sciences, led the fight for this law. He hailed it as a great opportunity for government, the IT industry, and society. Sturmer believes everyone will benefit from this regulation as it reduces vendor lock in for the public sector, allows companies to expand their digital business solutions, and potentially leads to reduced IT costs and improved services for taxpayers. In addition to mandating OSS, the MBAG also requires the release of non personal and non security sensitive government data as open government data. This dual open by default approach marks a significant paradigm shift towards greater openness and practical reuse of software and data. Implementing the MBAG is expected to serve as a model for other countries considering similar measures. It aims to promote digital sovereignty and encourage innovation and collaboration within the public sector. The Swiss Federal Statistical Office, BFS, is leading the law's implementation, but the organizational and financial aspects of the OSS releases will still need to be clarified. Other countries in Europe have long supported open source. For example, in 2023, French President Macron stated, "We love open source," and France's National Gendarmerie Think FBI if you're in America, uses Linux on its PCs. The European Union has long worked on securing OSS via the EU's free and open source software auditing FOSSA project. That said, it's not all wine and roses in the EU. My brain twitched a little bit when they said wine. There's some worry that the European Commission will cut funding for the NGI Zero Commissions Fund, an important funding source for OSS projects. In the US, there's some support for open source, but not nearly as much as in Europe. The federal source code policy, for instance, requires federal agencies to release at least 20% of new custom developed code as open source software. It doesn't, however, mandate the use of open source. Similarly, the General Services Administration, GSA, has an OSS policy that requires GSA organizations to account for and publish their open source code. This policy promotes an open first approach for new custom code development. So while this legislative move positions Switzerland at the forefront of the global open source movement, more work needs to be done in both the Europe and the US. Now, I'm going to say that, the US could easily implement this law, but there's that catch that it needs to be secure that would make it so that nothing was ever open source in America.
That and anytime so right now when it comes to software being used by big government agencies, there's always somebody from Microsoft or Oracle in the meeting room that is offering this and that just to kind of move the needle their direction, and corporate interests are always going to get in the way in this country. I can't speak for other countries. I don't imagine there's a heck of a lot of difference, except Europe just seems to be a little further ahead on this than we are.
Yeah. They've gone
And
back and forth. I mean, you've seen this type of thing before. They did it in Germany like
yeah,
a
and they
decade
keep doing it
ago.
wrong,
Well,
That's
yeah, but the Germany thing was also a trial run,
Yeah.
and they ran it for a year and then went back to figure out how to implement it, and then they did a good job of implementing it the second time.
yeah. Well, we'll see, because they're still using their own home baked thing that instead of going with an actual company like Canonical or something like that.
Well,
Okay,
if they
I
went with
heard differently,
Canonical,
but still.
if they went with Canonical, they'd want from some support from Canonical, and then they'd just end up paying for that anyway. So I don't know. It's kind of a balance of things.
Anyway,
Moving
Moss,
on.
Okay. Intel suffers major stock loss due to workforce restructuring.
And I have to stop you there. It's not just their workforce restructuring. It's the fact that they're cooking their CPUs. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that bit comes to later.
Text summarized by Eric from several articles, as listed at the end. Intel is undergoing significant restructuring as it faces substantial challenges in the competitive semiconductor market. The company announced plans to cut over 15% of its workforce, translating to approximately 17,500 jobs, as part of a broader strategy to save $10 billion by 2025. This decision follows a disappointing financial performance, including second quarter net loss of $1.6 billion, a stark contrast to a profit of $1.5 billion in the same period the previous year. The layoffs will primarily affect sales, marketing, and administrative roles and are expected to be completed by the end of 2024. CEO Pat Gelsinger emphasized that these painful decisions are necessary to align Intel's cost structure with its new operating model, particularly as the company struggles to capitalize on trends like artificial intelligence. There is also pressure from chipmaker ARM with the recent advent of Copilot PC powered by Snapdragon's X processor line, as well as Apple's highly successful M-series chips. Intel had previously failed to capitalize on the smartphone market as well. Despite the layoffs, Gelsinger assured that the company remains committed to its turnaround plan, which includes a focus on developed advanced AI processors and enhancing its foundry services. However, analysts have expressed skepticism about whether these measures will be sufficient to restore Intel's competitive edge against rivals like NVIDIA and AMD, especially given the company's lagging position in the AI chip market. In addition to workforce reductions, Intel will suspend its dividend starting in the fourth quarter. This move is part of a concerted effort to improve its balance sheet and manage rising costs associated with its foundry operations. The company has also been impacted by external factors such as reducing spending in the data center segment and challenges in its China operations due to revoked export licenses. As a result, Intel's stock plummeted nearly 20% in after-hours trading following the announcement, reflecting investor concerns about the company's future prospects. Intel's strategic pivot includes leveraging significant government support through the CHIPS Act, which has allocated up to $8.5 billion in funding to bolster domestic chip manufacturing. This financial backing aims to help Intel build new facilities across the U.S. and create thousands of jobs, although the realization of these plans will take time and require substantial investment in infrastructure and workforce development. And then the show notes will show all the citations for these articles that Eric compiled for us. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I read so many articles and I thought, you know what? Rather than try to just pick one, because they were sort of coming at it from different angles, and I like the idea that Intel had so much dominance in the x86 processor market, and the fact that the world has sort of changed based on the needs of AI processing, smartphones and technology itself moving away from the traditional desktop PC, and this idea that they're going to reimagine themselves as a foundry for other companies and produce different types of chipsets and things, I think is interesting, and also the tie-in with the CHIPS Act. So yeah, I wanted to make sure we could account for all of that. But I mean, I think this is kind of interesting. I think it would be nice to have some domestic chip production, but I think it's also a big gamble on their part. But what other choice do they have? So
Yeah, I don't think they quite pulled a BlackBerry and holding on to the old way of doing things, but the way this article reads is pretty close.
yeah, well, they losing as much as they gained the previous quarter of the previous year. So I mean, that's definitely a big turnaround. So, and losing 20% of their stock value, which was like tens of billions of dollars.
They're going to have to make
So,
some big changes to come back.
yeah. So, okay.
All right, moving on. Proton now has a Bitcoin wallet from How to Geek. Proton might be best known for its mail and VPN services, but the company now has an entire ecosystem of privacy-preserving apps and services. The latest addition is certainly questionable, though, a Bitcoin wallet. Proton has just announced Proton Wallet, a digital wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin cryptocurrency. Bitcoin can be purchased in 150 plus countries through Proton's licensed third parties. Proton Wallet also supports Bitcoin via email, which allows people to send and receive Bitcoin using the email address tied to their Proton account, instead of more complex Bitcoin wallet addresses. The company said in a press release, Proton occupies a unique spot among wallet providers. It is not a crypto company, has never issued a cryptocurrency, does not trade or speculate in crypto, nor is it an exchange. It is not profit-driven either, as its primary shareholder is the nonprofit Proton Foundation, whose mission is to preserve privacy and freedom online. From this perspective, Proton is maybe the last organization one would expect to enter the Bitcoin space, but it hopes through the launch of Proton Wallet to provide exactly what the space needs to gain mainstream trust and acceptance. Bitcoin is a decentralized cryptocurrency that is most often used as a speculative investment or as payment to criminals, either for ransomware or illegal purchases, with regular peer-to-peer payments making up a smaller percentage of transactions. It also uses significantly more electricity than comparable transactions in the regular fiat global banking system, thanks to its proof of work model. And the electricity often comes from coal plants and other non renewable energy sources. Cryptocurrency as a concept might have some merit, but Bitcoin is arguably the worst implementation of cryptocurrency, largely because it was the first one out of the gate. Bitcoin has had roughly 15 years to prove itself as a viable alternative to fiat currency, and it has failed at almost every opportunity. Proton pointed out in its announcement that it has accepted payments in Bitcoin since its initial funding round in 2014. But that's not the same as convincing people to enter the ecosystem for the first time, or hoping Bitcoin can finally gain mainstream trust and acceptance. Proton Wallet is also a significant departure from Proton's other apps and services, which mostly serve as alternatives to big tech services like Gmail and Google Calendar. Google and Microsoft have never launched a crypto wallet, and Meta's ambitions for cryptocurrency payments fell apart in 2019. The lack of proper banking infrastructure and user protections also makes Bitcoin wallets a common target for hackers and scammers, in a practice known as wallet draining. Proton says it has beefed up security with two factor authentication and Proton Sentinel, which uses advanced machine learning and AI along with human analysis to block malicious login attempts with high accuracy. That likely won't mitigate all hacking and social engineering attempts, though. Proton Wallet is rolling out now in early access to users on the Proton Visionary plan, and users with access can invite up to 10 other people to join. Now, it kind of hurts to, hear them talk about about Bitcoin specifically that way, but really, I can't say that they're wrong. But a lot of that distrust for cryptocurrency in general seems to come from the media really pushing that narrative. Is there a lot of really malicious stuff that goes on there? Yes, but still.
I think if they do it right, they'll be the first ones that did.
The issue with Bitcoin is not, I don't think, this kind of malice that is pushed by the media. I think the issue with Bitcoin is that it's a volatile investment, and people get involved, and people, especially if you don't know what you're doing, can lose a lot of money. I'm looking at myself here. The and with the way that the industry has developed, there are more and more people thinking this is just basically some kind of con. Really, it's a Ponzi scheme or whatever. At the end of the day, I think those are more compelling arguments against Bitcoin than this kind of stuff. That its security is weak, and then you could lose all your money and all that and the other. I mean, for God's sake, I mean, it's not like multinational companies don't pay multinational multi-billion dollar companies to sort out all their infrastructure. And it's never been the case that banks and GPs and airlines and everything all go down because of a dodgy update. I mean, who'd ever heard of anything to do with that? Crunch strike. So I mean, so I think that's not the best argument against it. There's other arguments, as I said.
Well,
That one I won't go for.
most of what they said about crypto is really good. That especially the Bitcoin uses the worst energy process, but most of the fraud is actually not happening with Bitcoin or Monero or Ethereum, but with the other people that tried to jump and say, "Yeah, we're doing this too."
The pump and dump
Exactly.
schemes.
Yeah, the people who don't know what the situation is, the people who look at something and then, I'll put a couple of £100 down, and then before you know it, they've lost. And or there's also cryptocurrency has, like all industries, has a massive crime problem. The crime problem is just people scamming you in some way or the other. We'll pay you, but we'll pay you in our altcoin instead. Oh, and that altcoin, suddenly drops value.
Yeah, but think of it like this: eventually, you're going to see some type of cryptocurrency, some type of blockchain currency, be the standard. Just think, if the U.S. implements one, they can track every dollar that you earn, every dollar that you spend, and they can tax both directions all that they want to. And there won't be any doubt. They will have complete control of your money at that point. So yes,
Such
I do see that
terrifying
actually
words
happening.
you speak, but probably true.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
This kind of links into the earlier news article. Intel admits damage to unstable 14th and 13th gen CPUs is permanent. An incoming patch is a is a preventative but not a cure. So this is from Tech Radar. Intel provided a statement earlier this week on the instability problems with the 14th gen and 13th gen CPUs. But some further details have come to light since then, including a clarification that any damage done to high-end CPUs is permanent. In case you missed it, Intel's previous announcement pinned down elevated operating voltage as a key cause, though not necessarily the only one, for those Core i9 processors and lower tier chips too, crashing and generally going awry. Team Blue also assured us that a fix in the form of a microcode update is inbound for these chips and should arrive around the middle of August. What's been made clear now, however, is that this is a preventative measure as opposed to a cure, by which we mean that it will prevent the instability issue with Raptor Lake and Raptor Lake refresh processors. But it won't reverse any damage already done to the CPU that has already been affected, and won't make it stable. The misfiring chip will continue to crash. Also, The Verge reports having fired a bunch of questions at Intel and received a fair few answers from the Intel spokesman, Thomas Hannaford, some of which may not comfort you that much. For starters, the tech site points to Tom's Hardware's recent assertion that the degradation of an affected Intel CPU is irreversible, with The Verge noting that Mr. Hannaford did not deny that when he was asked. One of the key questions posed by The Verge was, does Intel anticipate the fix will be effective for chips that have already been in service but are not yet experiencing symptoms, i.e., invisible degradation? Are these CPUs just living on borrowed time? His reply was as follows. Intel is confident that the microcode patch will be an effective preventative solution for processors already in service. The validation continues to ensure that the scenarios of instability reported to Intel regarding its Core 13th and 14th gen desktop processors are addressed. Intel is investigating options to easily identify affected or at-risk processors on end-user systems. It is possible the patch will provide some instability improvements to currently impacted processors. However, customers experiencing instability on their 13th or 14th gen processor should contact Intel customer support for further assistance. So, what do we make of that statement? Well, while Intel might be confident that the patch will work as a preventative, the issue of invisible degradation for us is whether the potential damage could have been done, not yet detectable, and that could be a problem down the line. In other words, while the microcode update may well stop further damage, our concern is that if some damage has already been happened, well, there's not, but doesn't have an observable effect initially. Well, this might, in the long run, mean the CPU doesn't last as long as it would have done. The writers, and myself included, find this whole episode a bit unsettling in this respect, and compounding these kinds of concerns when it comes to The Verge's question on whether Intel might extend warranty support. They didn't supply an answer. This spokesperson simply declined to comment. It's also worth noting that the final paragraph of the above statement doesn't completely rule out microcode update might just help out Intel processors that are also affected, but that are affected by instability issues. And it is possible the patch could provide some instability improvements, which will at least be something. But really, if you have a processor that's already exhibiting problems, the safest course of action seems to be to try and get it returned and replaced. Other notable revelations from The Verge's Q&A include Team Blue admitting any 13th or 14th gen CPU with a TDP of 65 watts or greater could be affected by the issue. This includes not just Core i and Core i9 and Core i7, but also Core i5 models such as the Core i5 14600. And we've seen reports of other Core i5 CPUs being hit. That said, it seems that the higher end the chip, the higher the TDP, the more the risk of a poor outcome with stability issues. Intel also said it won't be engaging in any kind of recall, and the company hasn't shorted chip shipments for sales while the microcode update is being finished off and validated. That is a dick move. That microcode patch will roll out via motherboard vendors in BIOS substrates next month, as mentioned and Meanwhile, Hannaford confirmed to The Verge that Intel is still investigating possible other causes that may run alongside the uncovered key problem with the voltage issue. Intel's problem doesn't. Intel's problem here is that it can't let this drag on. Not with the battle of the Arrow Lake versus Ryzen 9000 on the horizon, as this episode could be pretty off-putting for those looking to buy a next-gen chip, perhaps pushing them to favor Ryzen when they may not have done this before. So this is just a complete and utter shit show. You made a product, the product has a problem, you can't fix the product, you sent something out to try and stop the problem happening with the product, but you can't guarantee. And if the thing goes wrong, we're not going to replace it. It's just bollocks. I'm sorry.
Let's all buy Intel chips. Yeah.
I mean, you know, if there was ever a reason to jump off onto, and the thing is, the new AMD Ryzen 9000s are looking excellent. We've already talked about Snapdragon and Windows on ARM. It's almost like Intel is like, you know, we have a market. Let's try and dunk it.
It's interesting. This comes out the same time as the article on the other thing where they're like, yeah, you know, we're gonna focus all on allowing other vendors to have a piece of the pie, you know. And then
It's
this.
just, I mean, yeah, that I bet is shit. We're going down. Let's see if other people can get involved with us so that our losses will be less.
Yeah. Maybe we shouldn't make chips anymore. Yeah, it's pretty egregious. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, so what would have been a positive outcome here? Okay,
Extended warranty support.
yeah,
That's all they had to do, really.
yeah, really.
They can't afford it right now.
Free replacement of damaged chips would be good.
They can't afford it right now.
Well, then maybe don't make shit in it.
Yeah.
Maybe don't test in production.
Yeah. Nobody else does.
Well,
that
thought, you know, is it absolutely necessary to push out a new chip? You know, like they're meeting some sort of a internal target, and you know,
Yeah.
if something's not ready, it's not ready. You know, what is this artificial pressure to, you know, push out new?
Constantly iterating.
It's the markets. It's about financial figures. It's about you know, financial years. It's nothing about it being nothing technical about it at all. It's like, for example, I mean, this is something different, I know, but there was I think it was Apple's WWDC, and a lot of the commentators said, yeah, the first 2 days were for the sponsors and for the media partners. Look what we can do. Look what we can do. What we can do. Only the last day was really for the users. And big tech thinks like that. Big tech thinks of how it's going to grow and how much money it's going to make, and doesn't really give as much attention as they should to the product. I mean, the whole tech industry is littered with stuff like that. You are right. Things should be released when they're ready, but there's a hype cycle, there's a marketing cycle, there's Christmas, Black Friday, there's investors, you know, all that sort of stuff. It's just
the market,
it's
the
crap.
market itself has shifted, and I think Eric was about to mention the same thing when it comes to like video games, which are an excellent example of what's happening in the market. You release a game, it's not complete, it's half broken. People buy it, they complain. You release patches, and then you know by the time the last patch comes out, a year into the playing cycle of the game, it's almost a fully functioning game. And then comes the DLC. Pay more.
But here's the point. If you've got a damaged chip, that's not fixable. Yeah. So, and this
Right.
is the point. This is the point. The point is that with the example, with Eric's example, at the end, in the end, you have a fully working product as it should be. In this, you don't.
I saw a video on this earlier, I believe it was today, where someone was mentioning that there will be a class action lawsuit. But sadly, it's going to take, you know, at least 5 years, more than likely. And most people that bought these chips are only going to get like $20 out of this this class action lawsuit, which,
Yep.
while terrible for the end user, it's good that Intel's going to have to, own up and pay something, hopefully one day, maybe.
Okay, next up, Fun2 calls it quits. This is from D. Robbins, who's the lead dev on Fun2. He writes, all good things must come to an end. I've decided to end the Fun2 Linux project. Fun2 started as a philosophy to create a fun community of contributors building something great together. For me, it's no longer that, so I need to move on to other things. There is not a successor BDFL for Fun2, nor am I interested in trying to find one or hand the project off to someone else. You can expect the project to wind down through August. If you have a Fun2 container, it will continue to be online through the end of August, so you have time to find another hosting solution if you need one.
Pardon my ignorance, but what exactly was Fun2? Was it a distro or was it some container technology?
Well, let's have a look, shall we?
Man, look stuff on internet.
Yeah, Fun2. Okay, so Fun2 is Fun2 Linux.
Yeah, it's a meta distribution, so
Yeah.
so it's
Community developed Linux meta distribution and
What's
evolution
a
of
meta
Gen 2.
distribution?
Fun2 Linux is optimized for the best possible performance on the latest Intel and AMD hardware.
So
they claim that their difference from Gen 2. So Fun2 basically a meta distribution, meaning that it was a way to package Gen 2. So it made Gen 2 easier to get started using and then also to use in day-to-day operations. So Gen 2, normally you would have to compile everything from source. And there are sort of stages where you can.
So like how like how Endeavor is to Arch.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of in a rough way. Yes, the answer is yes. And they had a different approach to the community, to the way they supported their community. And yeah, it was basically just if you were going to try to run Gen 2 and you didn't want to go through all of that, like, setup and compiling and all that, or depending on which stage you start at, Fun2 was a way to sort of just start using it. So it's kind of a bummer. I'm surprised, but I have respect for him saying, look, rather than suffering and killing myself and going crazy and, end up hating this, I'm just going to say, look, I don't want to do it anymore. And, I'm not going to hand it off. Like, it's time to walk away. So
one of the best things I ever heard from someone who's a psychologist is self-care is not selfishness. And it seems to me that the person here has decided that this is not good for me, my life at this moment in time, and you got to look after number one. And only by looking after number one can you actually do the important things in your life, like look after your family and stuff like that. It's a little bit heavy, I know, but I'm kind of getting that vibe from there.
I don't know if I saved it or not, but I saw this cartoon like last week where basically it was this, the totality of like the software stack of the modern era and like all the cloud stuff and all this. And then in the bottom corner, propping all of this stuff up as this one single project where, it's one guy toiling away in his basement for 20 years, and just, it speaks to the sort of the way that open source can kind of consume someone if they, if that's what you want to do, like if you're Linus Torvalds or if you're someone who is just like so dedicated to it that all you want to do and all you think about is that, then fantastic. It's an outlet for you to do that. But some people, I think, feel like they paint themselves into a corner and then, they're kind of stuck like, I need help. I can't just do this. I mentally can't do it. I physically can't stay up all night doing it anymore. People get older. I used to be able to work for 18 hours a day and like it was fine, and now I can't do that anymore. So I get it. Things change. So good for him. Shame for the users, but it is what it is.
Okay, moving on then. The long-awaited Linux distro Serpent OS is finally here. From Notebook Check. Unlike most Linux distributions, Serpent OS does not use existing distributions like Ubuntu or Debian. Ike Doherty, all-round fantastic guy who is one of the best people ever when it comes to Linux and his involvement in Linux over all the time that he's been involved. Has been writing Serpent OS from scratch for the past 4 years. This fact allows Serpent OS to boast features not found in other Linux distros. The team hopes that thanks to this, the user will benefit from a more efficient system that can leverage cutting-edge tools to increase productivity, lower development time, and create a system that isn't broken by updates. The Serpent OS pre-alpha ships with GNOME 45.3, which is not the latest environment, but this might change by the final release. The minimal desktop includes a pre-installed app selection suite, including Firefox, Zcoder. The latter are only recently available to users of Mac OS. Much like Serpent OS, Zeditor provides a clean and fast user experience while leveraging the performance enhancements of the Rust programming language. Moss, the package manager, not
No
the
way.
contributor,
No way.
is also written in Rust. Yes, I always thought Moss was a bit rusty. And is unique to the self-distribution.
It's called old age. Take it easy on me.
For every package management option, Moss creates a new self-contained transaction. Moss allows the system to offer rollbacks to an earlier state if the package or package update is unsafe to apply. This feature alone could prevent systems from crashing from an update. Rust also ensures that the processes are quick and memory safe. However, there is a pre-alpha build of the OS and it has limitations. Currently, there's no graphical installer. Users are required to partition their drives for installation manually. There is also no support for other desktop environments besides GNOME. Because, who needs anything else? Thankfully, there are plans to support System 76's upcoming Cosmic environment and other popular Linux desktops. To learn more, try the distro yourself. There are some links in the article.
You would think they'd have Budgie.
We're not done talking about Moss.
You would think they have Budgie already set up to go on it since Serpent OS and all those people work together.
I had the feeling that this was like for Ike, this was kind of a stepping off from a fresh footing sort of project,
Yeah, all of his projects are passion projects, aren't they? And I think he really enjoys the setting up a bit of it.
My hot take on it is that he is a great starter. He's a visionary. He's someone who comes in and he starts something that is different, that is unique, and is able to get all of the foundation laid. And then he's happy to sort of bring people in. Speaking of burnout, right? I think he's really sort of mastered that ability to leverage the community to, bring in the right people to help him. And Solus was a great example of that. Wasn't the cleanest example, but I think he's probably learned some lessons from that. And yeah, this is cool. I'm interested to see, given that immutable or composable or whatever you want to call those distros have become more popular because of the ability for rolling back to images and things where you can't break it, so to speak. The idea that's what this is trying to do, but in a apparently different way, I think that's pretty cool. So I want to learn more about this. I knew it was in the works, but I really haven't followed much of it. So yeah,
I've known about it for some time, but there's been no real easy path to try it out, and I right now I just don't have the time to mess around with if I had to do Arch the old-fashioned way, I wouldn't have it on any machines right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, good luck to him. Good job. Good luck on the Moss package manager. I hope it doesn't irritate you too much. And
Phil,
I'm sorry.
I'm not irritating.
No. What was I thinking?
It kind of surprised me that the Moss package manager is command line only.
Hey, now.
That was the best we could come up with right now. Don't worry, we'll have more later when we got more.
Yeah.
We had more time to think about it.
Hey guys, that's the news. Why don't we wrap it up?
Are you hosting?
No, I'm waiting for the host to show some oomph.
Some respect for the Moss package manager.
No, some respect for the show notes.
Oh, okay. In respect to these great show notes, that's it for the news. Moving on to security and privacy. Go on then, Moss.
Okay, Secure Boot is completely broken on 200 plus models from 5 big device makers. This is from Ars Technica. In 2012, an industry-wide coalition of hardware and software makers adopted Secure Boot to protect against a long-looming security threat. The threat was the specter of malware that could infect the BIOS, the firmware that loaded the operating system each time a computer booted up. From there, it could remain immune to detection and removal and could load even before the OS and security apps did. The threat of such a BIOS-dwelling malware was largely theoretical and fueled in large part by the creation of IC Lord BIOS Kit by a Chinese researcher in 2007. IC Lord was a rootkit, a class of malware that gains and maintains stealthy root access by subverting key protections built into the operating system. The proof of concept demonstrated that such BIOS rootkits weren't only feasible, they were also powerful. In 2011, the threat became a reality with the discovery of Mibromi, the first known BIOS rootkit to be used in the wild. Keenly aware of Mibromi and its potential for a devastating new class of attack, the Secure Boot architects hashed out a complex new way to shore up security in the pre-boot environment. Built into UEFI, the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface that would become the successor to BIOS, Secure Boot used public key cryptography to block the loading of any code that wasn't signed with a pre-approved digital signature. To this day, key players in security, among them Microsoft and the U.S. National Security Agency, regard Secure Boot as an important, if not essential, foundation of trust in securing devices in some of the most critical environments, including in industrial control and enterprise networks. On Thursday, researchers from security firm Binarly revealed that Secure Boot is completely compromised on more than 200 device models sold by Acer, Dell, Gigabyte, Intel, and Supermicro. The cause, a cryptographic key underpinning Secure Boot on those models that was compromised in 2022. In a public GitHub repository committed in December of that year, someone working for multiple US-based device manufacturers published what's known as a platform key, the cryptographic key that forms the root of trust anchor between the hardware device and the firmware that runs on it. The repository was located at GitHub. There's a long... I'll let you look up the address in the show notes. But basically for Ryzen 2000, 4000. And it's not clear when it was taken down. The repository included the private portion of the platform key in encrypted form. The encrypted file, however, was protected by a 4-character password, a decision that made it trivial for Binarly and anyone else with even a passing curiosity to crack the passcode and retrieve the corresponding plain text. The disclosure of the key went largely unnoticed until January 2023, when Binarly researchers found it while investigating a supply chain incident. Now that the leak has come to light, security experts say that it effectively torpedoes the security assurances offered by Secure Boot. Quote, "It's a big problem," end quote, said Martin Smolar, a malware analyst specializing in rootkits who reviewed the Binarly research and spoke to the author about it. Quote, "It's basically an unlimited Secure Boot bypass for these devices that use this platform key. So until device manufacturers or OEMs provide firmware updates, anyone can basically execute any malware or untrusted code during system boot. Of course, privileged access is required, but that's not a problem in many cases," end quote. Binarly researchers said their scans of firmware images uncovered 215 devices that use the compromised key, which can be identified by the certificate serial number 55:87:81:23:007:84:B3:B3:CD:87:3A:4. You got that? A table appearing at the end of the article lists each one. So you'll have to go to the article to find that.
I can't believe you read that whole thing.
I did.
Wow. Awesome.
You ate it, Ralph.
That's
The
what our
res-
audience is looking for. Sorry.
The researchers soon discovered that the compromise of the key was just the beginning of a much bigger supply chain breakdown that raises serious doubts about the integrity of Secure Boot on more than 300 additional device models from virtually all major device manufacturers. As is the case with the platform key compromised in the 2022 GitHub leak, an additional 21 platform keys contain the strings "do not ship" or "do not trust." These keys were created by AMI, one of the three main providers of software developer kits that the device makers use to customize their UEFI firmware so it will run on their specific hardware configurations. As the strings suggest, the keys were never intended to be used in production systems. Instead, AMI provided them to customers or prospective customers for testing. For reasons that aren't clear, the test keys made their way into devices from a nearly inexhaustive roster of makers. In addition to the 5 makers mentioned earlier, they include AOpen, For Me Life, Fujitsu, HP, Lenovo, and Supermicro. Cryptographic key management best practices call for credentials such as production platform keys to be unique for every product line, or, at a minimum, to be unique to a given device manufacturer. Best practices also dictate that keys should be rotated periodically. The test keys discovered by Binarly, by contrast, were shared for more than a decade among more than a dozen independent device makers. The result is that the keys can no longer be trusted because the private position of them is an open industry secret. In an interview, Binarly founder and CEO Alex Mastrosov wrote, quote, "Imagine all the people in an apartment building have the same front door lock and key. If anyone loses the key, it could be a problem for the entire building. But what if things are even worse and other buildings have the same lock and the keys?" Mastersoft said his team found identical test platform keys on both client and server-related products. Team members also determined that at least one test key was used in devices sold by 3 distinct manufacturers. Quote, "If the key will be leaked, it's impacting the ecosystem," end quote, he explained. Quote, "It's not impacting a single device," end quote. Binarly has named its discovery PK Fail in recognition of the massive supply chain snafu resulting from the industry-wide failure to properly manage platform keys. The report is available at the link. Proof of concept videos are here and here. There are links. Binarly has provided a scanning tool. More article can be found at the link, including all those links that we didn't link in our links. He said linkily.
You know, they really should have been clear about not using this key. I mean, you know, it's just like, hey guys,
When
use
it
this
says
key.
"do not use" right in the middle of the key,
I love that. You know, and that's exactly what happened is they baked it in. It worked. QA tested it. It worked. And they were like, ship it. That's exactly how it happened.
Excellent.
There's no mystery there.
Gosh. All right.
Anyway.
Moving on, Majid.
All right, hold on, let me get to the bit. New Android malware wipes your device after draining bank accounts. This is from Bleeping Computer. A new Android malware that researchers call Bingo Mod can wipe devices after successfully stealing money from the victim's bank accounts using the on-device fraud technique. Promoted through text messages, the malware poses as a legitimate mobile security tool and can steal up to 15,000 euros per transaction. According to researchers analyzing it, Bingo Mod is currently under active development, with its author focusing on adding code obfuscation and various evasion mechanisms to drop detection rate. Researchers at Cleafy, an online fraud management and prevention solution, found that Bingo Mod is distributed in smishing, or that is SMS phishing campaigns, and uses various names that typically indicate a mobile security tool, e.g., app protection, antivirus cleanup, Chrome update, InfoWeb, etc., etc. In one instance, the malware uses the icon for the free AVG antivirus and security tool available on Google Play. This came up the other day on mine. During the installation routine, the malware requests permission to use accessibility services, which provides advanced features that allow extensive control of the device. Once active, Bingo Mod steals any login credentials, takes screenshots, and intercepts SMS messages. To perform an on-device fraud or ODF, the malware establishes a socket-based channel to receive commands and an HTTP-based channel to send a feed of screenshots, enabling almost real-time remote operation. ODF is a common technique used for initiating fraudulent transactions from the victim's device, which fools standard anti-fraud systems that rely on identity verification and authentication. Cleafy researchers explain in a report today that the VNC routine abuses Android Media Protection API to obtain real-time screen content. Once received, this is transformed into a suitable format and transmitted via HTTP to the TA's, the threat actor's infrastructure. One feature of the routine is that it can leverage accessibility services to impersonate the user and enable the screencasting request exposed by the Media Protection API. The command that the remote operators can send to Bingo Mod includes clicking on a particular area, writing text on a specific input element, and launching an application. The malware also allows manual overlay attacks through fake notifications initiated by the threat actor. Additionally, a device infected with Bingo Mod could also be used to further spread the malware through SMS. Bingo Mod can remove security solutions from the victim's device or block activity of apps that the threat actor specifies in a command. To evade detection, the malware's creators have added code flattening and string obfuscation layers, which, based on the scan results and virus total, achieved its intended goal. If the malware is registered on the device as a system device app, the operator can send a remote command to wipe the system. According to the researchers, this function is executed only after a successful transfer and impacts the only external storage. For a complete wipe, it is possible that the threat actor uses the remote access capability to erase all data and reset the phone from system settings. Although Bingo Mod is currently at version 1.5.1, Cleavy says it appears to be in the early development stage. Based on the comments in the code, researchers believe Bingo Mod may be the work of a Romanian developer. However, it is also possible that developers from other countries are contributing. Update from yesterday, Google has confirmed that the Play Protect detects and blocks Bingo Mod. Wow, that's scary. In fact, that's so scary, I'm about to send that to my non-technical friends.
Yeah, normal BAU.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong
Well,
here.
of course, it depends on where you're draining their bank account to, Majid.
Yes, if they're draining it to my account, I have no problem. But unfortunately, I don't think that's where it's going.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, that is scary, and I may do the same thing. Just sort of make sure it gets visibility. So, ugh. All right. Well, moving on. Telegram controlled TG rat attacking Linux servers to exfiltrate data. This is from Cybersecurity News. TG rat, which is one word, T capitalized G small capitalized R A T, a Telegram controlled Trojan was discovered attacking Linux servers in an attempt to steal data from a compromised system. The TG rat Trojan was first identified in 2022. Although the original version of the Trojan was small and designed for Windows, the latest version uses the widely used messaging app Telegram to target Linux servers. Okay. The Trojan is controlled through a private Telegram group to which the bot is connected. Using the messenger, attackers can issue commands to the Trojan. It can download files from a compromised system, take a screenshot, remotely execute a command, or upload a file as an attachment, Dr. Webb shared with his Cybersecurity News. What a great name for a cybersecurity person, Dr. Webb. Given the popularity of the Telegram application and the regular traffic to its servers, it is not unusual for threat actors to use it as a vector to distribute malware and steal sensitive data. This is because it's simple to hide malware on a compromised network. The Trojan is made to target particular computers upon startup. It verifies the computer name's hash with an embedded string. If the values do not match, TGRAT terminates the process. If not, it establishes a network connection and employs a particular approach to communicate with its control server, which is a Telegram bot. Attackers can give commands to the Trojan using the messenger. It can upload data as attachments, capture screenshots, remotely run commands, and download files from a hacked system. Attackers issue commands to multiple bots, unlike their Windows counterparts. Researchers stated that this Trojan used the Bash interpreter to run commands and was encrypted using RSA, allowing the execution of entire scripts in a single message. Because every Trojan instance had a distinct ID, attackers could instruct several bots to join a single chat room by sending commands to each one of them. Even though the Trojan and control server's method of interaction is unusual, the attack can be identified by closely examining network traffic. While data exchange with Telegram servers may be commonplace for user computers, it is not conventional for a local network server. Yeah, that's the part I'm not quite getting about this. It is challenging for victims to identify the infection because of the special control mechanism that allows attackers to send commands to the compromised system silently. Therefore, it is advised to install antivirus software on every local network node to prevent infection. So is this running on a just a random client PC and looking for servers, or is it someone have Telegram installed on a server, which is just about the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I don't get it.
I don't
wish
know.
The article, I wish the article would have been more clear on that.
Majid, I did note that there is a UK urologist by the name of Dr. Dick Chop.
That's not very good at all.
Nice.
That's
Nice.
I don't like that.
That's my guy right there. That's who I'm going to.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
For more data jokes, please follow bart@moss.me.
Let's turn you right back down here.
Ain't nobody by that name, Majid.
All right.
Okay.
Do we have a host?
We do. Host with the most, baby. And that'll do it for our security and privacy. Moving on to the bi-weekly wanderings. Joe's favorite part of the show. I guess I'll go first since I always seem to be first on the list. Okay, so, I haven't done much these last 2 weeks with regards to tech due to work and real life stuff. But I did get Mint 22 installed on this, my main rig machine, in quotes. Replacing the Arch installation I'd been enjoying for nearly a month. I think it's been about a month. Although Arch has been fun and I've enjoyed the bleeding edge access to new software, much of what I considered an advantage is more likely a distraction. One thing I was having trouble with was Audacity. Audacity is a thorn in our side more often than not.
Oh my God, are you telling me that you had problems with Audacity?
Well, it wasn't just me. I think a few minutes before you were on the show, it was all of us.
Oh my God, I am shocked. I tell you, I am shocked. It's a good thing that I'm sitting down. Otherwise,
Hey, can you
I would
be
have
shocked
fainted.
a little further away from that microphone?
What, you mean this further away? This further away?
Back up just a little bit.
Just a bit.
About this further
Just a
away.
little.
What
Okay, there you go.
about from here?
That's better. That's much
I
better.
am shocked. I am shocked, I tell you. Audacity. William, the poor
Majid's
William and his
meltdown.
The audacity of Audacity.
I think Majid has lost it. Folks,
Mate,
you get
lost
to watch
it.
the meltdown.
It was
Lost
just
it.
so
When did I have
stable
it?
back with 2.3 and 2.4, and just what has happened since Muse Group took it over? People have been complaining about one thing or another ever since.
And they're not fixing the things that we're complaining about. But I think they're, and maybe rightly so, most of their focus has been on the Windows side, which doesn't seem to be having the same kind of problems that we are.
That's true. And then also the fact that they are pushing the Muse stuff, like that's really from a corporate standpoint, okay, you bought some software. You have to incorporate your product line into it because that was the whole point of buying it.
Yeah.
That has to happen quickly or else, you're seen as not, getting it done. So I get it. I do. And, the Linux user base, I'm sure there's probably millions of people using Audacity and probably 85, 90% of those people are on Windows. So,
and to be fair with Arch, and that's, to continue on with what I was talking about here, with Arch, you could literally follow the fix with these things, because what you could do with Arch is install the Git version of Audacity, and then you can, in the package build, which is the file that you use to it's basically the recipe for installing whatever piece of software that you can specify which branch that you want to install from. So you can literally follow right down to the patch level, the fixes that they're doing, and you can be a part of that, which this last go around, I mean, I don't know why 3.6.1 is still the flat pack, and it's still the version that's being offered as the newest version, and you try running that, and uh, across multiple distributions, whether you're recording or editing, the screen will just go blank on you for no reason whatsoever. And the fix is in 3.6.2, but you have to install that branch from GitHub, and you have to know how to do that. You can do that on an Ubuntu based machine too, but you got to know the git command to install from a particular branch. It's a little bit simpler in Arch, but like I said, these things are probably more of a distraction than anything else, because the tools I really need, frankly, I can get perfectly good use out of the version that's in the default repo. Now, even the default repo in Mint right now has a rather updated, although maybe like a year old version of Audacity.
It's 3.4.2. Ask me
Yeah,
how I know.
which is by the standards of anybody that's been keeping like right up to date with it, is pretty old, but it's a huge shift in the user interface since the version that was packaged in the previous versions of Mint.
And does
So
not include that bottom scroll bar.
now the scroll bar is fixed. So this is what it just drives. It's like playing whack-a-mole, because they fixed the scroll bar in 3.6.1. I was so happy, and then the whole thing just went blank. And then I thought, yeah, they're just messing with me now. They're just messing with me at this point. And so I tell them about that, and by that time somebody else had already said something, and somebody did a quick fix, and now it's in 3.6.2, but there it'll sit until enough people complain, I suppose. There's just not enough people using it, I guess. But yeah, there you are. Whatever. Like I said, following stuff like that and constantly playing with those kind of things can be a bit of a distraction. Oddly, the app image downloaded from the Audacity website. Now, when I wrote this is what I wrote. Oddly, the app image is downloaded from the Audacity website doesn't seem to suffer from the same bug. And that's also on 3.6.1. But there are some problems getting certain app images to work on Arch, and Audacity is one of them. See, the thing about the Audacity app image is that it's built against Ubuntu 18.04, I think. And so if you've had like some serious linker changes with the libraries between those versions across Linux in general, then you're going to have problems. And the Audacity app image does not work on Arch, because it's trying to get access to some folder in the .temp directory that just doesn't exist. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of documentation on it. People don't really seem to know what I'm talking about when I mention it. And then when I wrote this, I said, now that I'm back on Mint, I'm enjoying excellent app image support again. And that was true until last night, when I tried to import something that needed the use of FFmpeg, which Audacity will make gratuitous use of in order to extract the audio from, say, an OBS recording, where you've got an MKV container or an MP4 or something or other, and it just needs to get the audio out of it. Well, it uses FFmpeg transparently as you are importing to do that. Well, this new version, this new app image has no access to FFmpeg, even if you literally point it to the FFmpeg binary yourself. It still behaves as though it cannot see it. And then you go looking for that, and again, the answer is that it's built against 1804, and it's a completely different code path, and yada yada yada. This was the case back in Audacity 3.5.1, so this has been an ongoing problem, and I don't know if not enough people are using FFmpeg on the back end with Audacity, which if you're just using it to record and you're only importing like audio tracks that have never been anything except audio, then you're never going to see a problem with this. But like in my case, when I'm importing our tracks to make our shows, I'm comparing them to the audio extracted from the OBS recording that I make as a backup while we're recording the show. And if I can't do that, then I can't use the software. So it's been an ongoing thing. So far, other than using the older repo version, the only other option I've had was to literally compile it from source myself, and I'm installing it from GitHub from the 3.6.2 branch, which means you've got to manually keep up with the updates and all that. It's irritating. The Flatpak is still at 3.6.1. I'm not real sure what that's all about, but that suffers the same problem with the interface going blank. So if anybody important listens to the show and hears my voice, then please hear our pleas to get these things fixed. Audacity is a very important piece of software in the Linux world for content creators and the like. We need these things to work, and we're important too. We're not asking for huge things to be added in terms of new features, but we would like the things that are there to work.
Bill, I
If you
think
wish
this
to
is
support little Billy in his task to improve Audacity, you can send your donations to.
Yeah, just send me.
I think, Bill, this is a case where you're trying to do, let's say, the right thing based on your philosophy of open source and all of that. But I have to just say that I've started using Reaper, and yes, I had to pay $60 for it 4 years ago, and I continue to get updates to this day. It works flawlessly. It's more powerful than I could ever possibly imagine or use. I can't even wrap my head around some of the concepts in it. It has scripting. It does all of this. So I was editing the episode, latest Distro Hoppers Digest, and I wanted to do some audio tuning and then get some of the larger pauses out. There's a one-click toggle or one-click function. You click it, it does all of the leveling and normalization. It goes through and identifies areas based on what you put in as a criteria for what you consider too much silence. You can either see it as marked regions that you can then act on independently, or you can just tell it, go ahead and cut it for me. I mean, it's sublime compared to the clunk that is Audacity. And I can't knock it because Audacity has been a tool of mine for many, many, many years. And it does provide an open source alternative for a lot of people. And like you said, I think it probably works much better, if not flawlessly, on Windows. So it still has tremendous value, but it is very frustrating that an open source project that has been so reliable and so dependable for such a long time now has these issues,
And
on our next episode of Windows Cast, we will discuss it.
Well, no, but he's absolutely right. And to add to that, and he's right. My philosophy really governs the decisions I make in terms of the tools that I use. And if I have to learn something, or if something is slightly harder, then I will choose that path in order to stay open source, in order to stay free software as much as I can. So if you push me away onto a less free and open source platform, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what my philosophy is, I've still got to get the job done, right? If you push me away, then I think you've done something pretty egregious, because I will have you will have pushed me to make a decision that I might not bounce back from, because once I go and I learn something else like Reaper, because I do have it installed, and I've started the evaluation process and everything, especially if I end up having to pay for it. Once that's done and I've learned how to use it, I won't come back to Audacity, no matter what your claims are, because I've been burnt too many times by these things, and it's sad. It really is. So
Yeah.
Which is why I use SoftMaker Office. I knew you knew I'd get that in, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the right tool for the right job, and it's the tool that works best for the person. Not everybody's open source philosophy, as Eric
Well,
put it,
the bugs I
is
reported to OpenOffice 10 years ago have still not been fixed in LibreOffice.
yeah, and that's a huge project that's well funded, and if they can't get it right, but leaving all that aside, fix this stuff, Muse Group, before I lose it and go to something else, please. Moving on from that, before I get too depressed. As I discussed in the previous episode of mintCast, I was waiting for my Pine Time smartwatch to arrive, and it has. I'm really enjoying the advantages of a smartwatch. I haven't worn a watch since my early 20s, but I'm really enjoying this one, I gotta say. Go ahead, Eric.
How long did it take you? Because I ordered mine like 2 or 3 days ago, and they haven't shown any sort of a. No, I don't expect it to arrive that fast, but they haven't even like acknowledged it or anything.
It
So
took me 2.5 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some people were saying 3.5, but it took a lot less for me.
I don't
Okay.
think I got any information until like the last day, and then all of a sudden I got an email saying it was out for delivery.
Oh, I
Okay.
got it. I
Yeah.
got an email almost right off the bat saying that the order had been processed, and
That I
and
got,
they,
but nothing
and then
along
they
the way.
gave me something with a link to find the shipping, and I found the
Oh,
shipping, and it
okay.
was in China, and it went to about 6 different places in China before they handed it off to the Postal Service in China. And then it was almost a week before the Postal Service acknowledged they had it, and then I started getting
Okay.
updates again.
Well,
Okay.
did you pay
Cool.
extra for the FedEx shipping? Because
No.
No, I just
I
paid the $12 shipping. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't need it like right away. I just wanted it. So
Love my
it's
Pine
your
Time.
fault, Bill. It's your fault.
Well,
well,
it's my fault because Bill got it from me.
I gotta say, I'm really digging it. I mean, it doesn't do a heck of a lot of stuff. It kind of connects to your phone. You get notifications on your wrist, and then it counts your steps and your heart rate. It's got the little thing in the back that can.
You can connect a music player to it, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for $25.
And
Yeah.
that's super cheap, and it runs on. You got Linux running on your freaking wrist, folks. Come on.
You could get a similar watch from Wish, but you wouldn't be happy with it.
No. And there
You
is a
hate
way to get weather on it too. I just handling firmware on this thing is kind of a manual process.
I'm
so-
sure there's a lot of ways to do a lot of things on that if you really started digging through the
Yeah.
community, but that doesn't make it easy or practical.
No.
Well, it comes with Infinitime. I had 1.0.0. I updated it to 1.9, and I can't manage to update it to 1.14. But 1.9 does everything I need it to do, so why bother? But there are other operating systems you can even put on it.
I've got 1.11, and I don't know what that gives me that you don't have, except maybe those other 4 faces that I've got. Or no, I got 2
I
more
don't ask
faces.
that much from a digital watch, and this is just does everything I want it to do, and you couldn't beat the price.
I had
So
one of them.
Sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I had one of those Casio calculator watches when I was a kid.
Right.
And-
Everybody wanted one of those.
Yeah.
Well, this has been. I wear these Timex, and I've worn these forever. Like, and it's just basically the simple. You know, it's got an alarm, timer, stopwatch. You know, I had one for running specifically years ago when I was doing that, and this one's just sort of the same thing, but a slightly different. The thing I like is it lights up. It has the like indigo kind of thing, so I can check. You know, anyway, I wear a watch just because I don't like to pull my phone out of my pocket all the time, and so I think I'm more interested in trying this one. And this is really vain, but like I feel like this screams old man. It really does. And secondly, like I see a lot of people wearing a smartwatch, and I think, you know, there must be something to it. Like people wouldn't take the time to charge it, to deal with putting it on, and you know, like all of that, if there wasn't some value to it. And
Look,
it,
there's a couple of features that are really good. I do enjoy the step tracking because sometimes I don't have my phone on me. It's in a mount or whatever, and I can still track my steps. I do like the fact that, you know, notifications come up and I just couple of taps, and because I don't do the auto on because it eats battery.
Yeah.
So, you know, I push the button, I look, I see, okay, now I know, move on. Or I can pause, play my audio in case I'm not wearing a headset that has this right here. And or track a particular workout, keep track of my heart rate, especially while I'm sleeping, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And the Pine
But
Time does all that.
yeah, one great thing that this does that a lot of people don't think about is find my phone. I set my phone down somewhere in the house. I have no clue where. Couple of taps on here instead of me having to go and log into my Google Play account and hitting find my phone. I can just hit find my phone on here, and my phone will go full volume and start ringing, whether
no
it's on
kidding.
silent or not.
See, this is the type of stuff that I'm looking forward to. I agree with Moss. Like, this isn't about. I don't need Apple's latest watch with every bell and whistle possible. I'm not in any kind of ecosystem. I need it to communicate with an Android phone. That's it. And even on that level, just very much sort of a cursory level. But yeah, the idea is I miss notifications all the time. My phone's usually on vibrate, so it's not making noise. Or even if it is, I just don't hear the noise, or I don't feel the vibration. And my wife's like, I've messaged you half an hour ago. Why didn't you answer me? And it's like, oh, I didn't feel it. So I think having that on my wrist is going to help.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the heart rate, like everything you've mentioned sound like valuable sort of quality of life kind of things that, and again, for
$25
for the price and the fact that it's an open platform that they make
Right.
available to people to hack on. So
I don't-
in terms
And
of
the
software,
battery lasts more than a week.
Yeah, the
No,
battery
okay.
lasts a freaking week, dude.
No, on the yeah, mine
no
doesn't last a
lie.
week. Mine 3 days maybe. But on the
Okay.
Pine Time, I don't know if you can do that whole find my phone thing. I don't know if that's
You
set up
can,
well.
and you
Okay.
can do the opposite that too. You can do the Find My Watch from the phone.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
With
so in terms of like software, is there an alternative, or do you just run what it comes with, or like how does that
There
work? Because I
is-
know it.
Well,
Yeah.
if you're buying the setup like we got, this is not the
Yeah.
developer's edition.
No, I got the
But
sealed
with
one.
the developer's edition, you also have to put the watch together. I don't know how you can change the operating system without the developer's edition, but you can update the operating system firmware. Like I
Okay.
said, it comes with 1.0.0, and I should have gone to 1.14, but the thing was listed in Linux format, so I didn't know that 1.14 wasn't just an adaptation of 1.1.
So
So I got
it just-
1.9, and it's fine.
I got one dot. I think I got 1.11. I think it just works as an A/B kind of thing where you. Here's the thing about it: when you
Just
get
switch.
it, yeah, and
I have not been able to get it to update from.
I haven't either,
1.9.
but I haven't gotten too deep into it.
Yeah.
You have
So,
to go into the firmware settings and then like accept or validate. They call it the firmware. Otherwise, the next
Okay.
time you do a restart, it'll revert back to the old
Oh.
firmware. It does
Okay.
that by default in case there's a problem that you can't get through the interface to fix. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds like this $25 watch does basically everything that, you know, I wanted out of my $200 watch. So
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I thought
I've been
too. Is like,
through-
And it runs Linux.
And it
Go ahead,
runs
Matthew.
Linux, dude.
yeah. No, I was just saying that I've had a whole bunch of different smartwatches.
oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah.
Have you had like Apple ones or Google ones? Or
No,
like
no,
what?
no.
I did.
So, go on.
I did want to mention one thing about the Apple watches that you don't see on the Android watches. That's not going to make me go out and get one or Apple ecosystem or anything. But the glucose monitoring, that I am interested in because a lot of members of my
That
family
would be
has
nice.
diabetes.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
apparently that glucose monitoring isn't very accurate.
Yeah.
Really?
Okay. And that's from the medical side of it, because the technology that they're using, it would be great to tell you you're about to collapse, or that you're at risk of going too high or too low, but as an actual kind of number, that's what I understand, because the way that they're doing it, the infrared technology that they're doing to do that is a bit hit and miss, but I'm sure it's something that will improve over time. Yeah, no, smartwatches. So I've had quite a few smartwatches. I've never had an Apple Watch because I've never had an Apple device, so there was no real point. It only ever works with an Apple device. So I've never had one for that reason. I flitted between a number of brands, mainly either Samsung or Mobvoi. So Mobvoi is it's part of the Fossil Group, and
okay.
yeah, and they started off. They made Android Wear watches in which they had two screens. You had your smart screen, and then you had this low power LCD screen. So therefore, you could always check the time. You could easily just check the your step count or whatever without actually having to wake the phone up. Now, the thing that was great about that was the battery would last and last and last and last. I could get 3-4 days easily with that. This at a time when basically every Samsung watch which I tried basically had to be charged every night. Now, interestingly, when Samsung decided to go slightly left field and put the Tizen OS on the app on the phones, this would have been about 2017, 2018. Battery life improved a lot. Must be something to do with the architecture of the system, programming the code. I'm not sure entirely. And I do remember quite liking them. But then, Google paid them a whole load of money, and Samsung said, fine, we're no longer going to be supporting Tizen. We're going to go back to
Wear.
to Wear OS, as it's now been. And they have a deal where or Wear OS comes first to Galaxy watches. So, for example, the latest ones that they've just launched, they're all on Wear OS 5, and other devices are not.
Well, let me.
As time has gone on, what has happened is that this, like what we had with mobile phones, where you had initially loads of different players, lots of people doing experimenting and stuff like that. It's now getting whittled down and down and down and down, so that, for example, Fossil has now decided to leave the market completely, right? And you can get their smartwatches on fire sales at the moment. Mobvoi is part of Fossil Group. They haven't said that they're pulling out, but their release cycles have really decreased. I mean, they normally used to be 2 watches a year, 3, sometimes, and not in the last 2 years, there's only been 2. I did have a TicWatch 5, and I took that on a trip to when I went to Morocco earlier this year, and the battery on that was phenomenal. A full week. I didn't take the charger. I spent the entire holiday there.
Wow.
Didn't do that.
That
Okay.
was gutsy.
Now,
So sorry. So just to finish up. And so what I found basically was, if you wanted the best app experience, you went Samsung. If you wanted longevity, you had to go somewhere else, because Samsung was just running a full Android skinned, but full
Oh.
Android on the device, and you would with great difficulty get to 1.5 days. This changed, however, about 6 months ago when OnePlus released their watch. Now, OnePlus, so they originally released a watch about 18 months ago, called it the OnePlus watch, and it was just an iPhone clone. I mean, Apple Watch clone, in the sense that it looked very much like it, and it didn't do many smart things. It did the sleep tracking, it did the step counting, yeah, but you couldn't get apps onto it. It was running some kind of real-time OS, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second watch, which they released earlier this year, again, it would have been around March, I want to say. They touted 100 hours of battery life with it. And it was like, whoa, okay. How are they managing to do it? Well, like how I said that Mobvoi with their tick watches, they had 2 screens. Well, these had 2 operating systems running it. When it's when it's on its sleep mode, right, or its standard mode, it's running an RTOS that is very bare bones. It tells the time, counts your steps. That's might let a notification through. That's about it, right? And then if you want to do proper stuff like proper workout tracking, Strava, get your Spotify up on there, talk through the phone, use Google Assistant, whatever, it will then switch to Wear OS. And since I've been using that, 4 days battery life easily, right? And the other thing that I realized is you can have the watch with all the bells and whistles.
I think we're getting a little off topic.
So sorry, I do apologize. My only point, I was just going to
we can turn this into an internet's next show.
I was just thinking that wearables.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind that. I would really like to know more.
No,
about
it's a good topic. It's a good topic.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say
I'd love to talk. I'd love to talk about the emerging rings market for smart devices. Let's hold off on that until next show.
Yeah, sure. But just one last final line. There is no point having a watch that has all the bells and whistles if it's not charged. And that is what I learned after all the 7, 8, 9 watches that I ever bought. At the end of the day, if it's not on when you're looking at it, what's the point?
Right.
And as you say, quite rightly, this can be a good innard, so I'll shut up.
I'm glad we've got our next innards pick.
Yeah. Well, everybody needs to get one then, and then we can have something to talk about.
Well, hopefully I have mine by time the next show rolls around. So, I mean, that would be awesome. So,
and one of you can figure out the best way to get the firmware.
You're welcome.
I knew about the thing. I just hadn't. I needed somebody that I talked to regularly to get one and say, you
didn't know about the price. You knew about the device.
I knew about the price because I had heard about it on other. I just.
All right, we are moving on, people.
This is Bill's biweekly. Let's let Bill.
All right, so like I said, I've yet to update the firmware, which is the thing about devices like this. You have to do it yourself. For now, there's no automatic update mechanism for these devices. I will report back when I've taken the time to make a real attempt. Though she never said so, I could tell my wife liked the watch, so I went and ordered her one as well. The watch came as we record this 2 days ago via FedEx. I also ordered an assortment of colored bands to add a touch of fashion to her experience, because it just takes a regular 20 millimeter. And these bands, they've got that little tab where you can stick your fingernail down in there and just kind of slide it and the band comes right off. I didn't even know that existed. Thank you very much. And put the bands, I got a pack of these different colored bands for like less than $10. And now she's got all different girly colors she can put on it, and it just completely makes it a little bit more palatable for her. But she loves it. She's not removed the thing since she put it on, which I think is about as high a praise as you're going to get from her, because if she didn't like it, she wouldn't have spent more than 10 minutes with it. So,
okay, you have to get a summary from her
For the next show.
For the next show. I want to know a non-technical, non-Linux person why they would find it interesting. So
Right. Because my husband says so. That's what I'm going to
No, I doubt that's the answer.
Because it runs open source.
No, I doubt that's the answer.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I got. I say all I got. That was quite a lot. I had no idea. Joe, what do you got going on?
All right. Well, it's been a fun couple of weeks. Work has been absolutely crazy again between a couple of projects and some quarterly paperwork that's due. Plus, my one guy that was supposed to be coming back on Monday has a military extension now and is going to be gone until September 22nd. He's one of my two night guys. My other night guy has COVID. So it's been interesting trying to juggle people's vacations and comp days and things like that, and not burning myself out while working 60 or 70-hour weeks. Still working a lot of weekends, but at least those are from home, so I can kick off the 3D print if things get slow. But, I did get some things done. In looking at the project to modify that keyboard to Bluetooth, I found that I do not have a battery of the correct size or that will work well enough in that position. So I don't want to modify the project until I've done it the way the writer intended. There are some things I could do, like resizing the model to put in an 18650 or a 14500. But I want to stick with the LiPo for now, but none of my LiPos either work or they're too big. So I will be ordering a battery and then continuing on with that project. I may also purchase some different single core cable, a little bit thicker, just as a preference. The thinner stuff that I have might not stay at the correct angles. Now, I was also able to find another really good web camera at one of the resale shops with a standard mounting hole in the bottom that fits the 1/4 inch adapters. On the camera that I was previously using for my 3D printer, I had been using a 3D printed GoPro style articulated arm attached to a spring clip. That I had been moving that camera back and forth between my Pi and my garage computer, specifically for podcasting. Now, I could have recreated the whole setup and 3D printed those GoPro arms and the GoPro adapters that I had previously designed and put together. But I did have a gooseneck light that's on a spring clip that has gooseneck light on one side and a gooseneck 17 millimeter ball adapter on the other, used for mounting phones with just a spring mount for them. Um, and so it uses that instead of a 1/4 inch drive, and I can take the phone adapter off on there and just leave the 17 millimeter ball. Now, in the past, I have purchased adapters for this that would convert it to the 1/4 inch drive. But I checked Thingiverse to see if there was a 3D printed solution, since it would be easy enough to design. Strangely, no, I could not find one. So, of course, what I immediately said to myself was, to hell with wasting my time, and just purchased two of those adapters for $8. And then I went and took a lovely nap. No, that's a lie. I went to Tinkercad and designed one myself. It actually was pretty easy and worked well the first time. I took a couple of other 3D prints that were already sized for the 1/4 inch drive bolts and things like that, and the 17 millimeter ball mount, and put them together. Added some material around the outside edges and some holes. Although, and it works. Although I did go back after a couple of prints and make the shaft hole for the bolt a little larger for the next time I download and print it, in order to make the assembly just that little bit easier. Now, this adapter allowed me to mount the camera to the gooseneck and adjust as needed for my 3D printer. I will be printing more of these. I mean, they work really well. The 17 millimeter ball mount is a very common, easily affordable part that I use often and in a lot of places. And I even 3D print my own of those 17 millimeter ball mounts. So the adapter gives me a plethora of other tools that I can use with it. Now, in the last 2 weeks, my dad did come to visit as well and to drop off my son before the start of school. While he was here, we spent a lot of time watching TV from my Plex. My dad doesn't get around all that well, so he spends a lot of time either reading or watching TV or doing both at the same time or playing his Android games. There were a lot of issues with buffering and stalling, and the video just plain not working. I would have to downgrade the quality and usually kill Chrome and restart it to get every video to play. But I did find that switching to Firefox alleviated many of the issues and was a much better viewing experience all around. I could have the quality higher, and it just worked a little bit better in this instance. Now, I am thinking that it may be the device that I am using to stream, but it should be more than powerful enough. I think I'll try to reformat it, see what happens. It is one of the Dell Latitudes, the one with the i5 processor and I believe it's 8 gigs of RAM, and maybe it's 4 gigs, but I think it's 8 gigs of RAM. It's not overheating, and the RAM should not be filling up when I'm not using Chrome. So I'm not specifically sure what the issue is with the device. Top isn't showing excessive usage of anything, so more digging is required. Well, that's really all I've been up to. Moss?
Okay, then. I had a back to school safety training. School starts up on August 5th, I believe. Learned a few things, had found some tricks to make a bit more money, and got a new ID badge photo. That was some fun, seeing so many of the substitutes working in the district. I did upgrades on all the home machines except the currently unused Kudu 3. All of them worked well except my wife's T590. The screen was rolling all over the place. It was really nasty. It apparently uses the i915 video driver, which has problems with the 6.8 kernel. I applied a workaround suggested by Londoner, and it's going to be later on in the show. As I don't have the skill set to change kernels at this time, and it seems to have worked, I had a problem on 3 machines with the workspaces indicators on the taskbar being shrunk in width from a 5:3 or 6:3 ratio to a 2:3 ratio, which means they're narrow instead of wide. In other words, looking like a shrunk monitor to looking like a thin ribbon. So I have not found a fix for that yet. I did post to the Mint forum. I had that problem back with 21, and there was a fix for it. And I don't remember the fix, and I'll just wait to hear from the people in the forum.
Switch to cinnamon.
Nope, not going to happen.
Fix.
It's got too many bells and whistles for my autistic brain to keep up with.
Oh.
I got new headphones, disliked them, sent them back, got another set, and I'm keeping them. The bad set was by Phoenicus, had a great microphone, but the speakers in my ears were pretty bad. I certainly couldn't use them for audio editing. The new one that you see me wearing now is a Turtle Beach. Probably still not the best for sound, but significantly better. And with a plug-in microphone with a weak friction fit, well, Joe taught me how to fix the friction fit. But I don't care about the microphone. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, great. I don't care.
Now, I want to point out that the Recons that he has are the ones that I originally wanted him to get when I told him to buy Turtle Beach, but we couldn't find them at the time at a reasonable price. And the sound quality on them for mid-range is absolutely incredible.
For 25 bucks, you know.
Yeah, you will be completely surprised. Plus, they're the easiest headphones on the planet to fix.
I know what you mean.
I'm going to be sending my old Turtle Beach off to you. See if you can
so I can fix the cable.
Yeah.
I do not. I've got so many headphones, but I have not been able to find any one pair of anything that I can wear for the recording and the editing both. Because even sitting here, I've got one pair that these monitors, earbuds that I wear to make the show, to record. But if I try to edit with these, I miss a lot of the noise that I want to get filtered out, you know, and so I switched to something else, but none of those sound good or work well when I'm recording.
Bill, I'm going to make a suggestion that you will find meets your aesthetic.
Let's have it.
DT 770s,
DT 770s. Okay.
and they're not cheap. That's
Fair
why
enough.
they meet your aesthetic.
Yeah, I was gonna say, great.
Bill has all the money in the world. Yeah.
Apparently. I think I'm all right with it. I've given up on full ear headphones when I'm behind the microphone anyway. It's just too hard to keep the microphone from picking up the sound coming out of them, you know. So, and these, I've gotten used to these. I don't have them all the way in my ear. If I try to do that, I'm using like the smallest size of the rubber plug, and they'll pop back out. But they're in just far enough because all I need them to do is hear a little bit of my own voice and then hear you guys talking, you know, and then I can put them away until the next time I record. But
Well,
yeah.
that's it for my biweeklies. I think we still have Majid to go.
Yep. So
And Eric.
yeah, so a combination of working silly hours, a lad's shooting holiday up in North Wales, and a family bereavement meant I was unable to join the last podcast the last time. I did manage to get onto OTC, where we had a great chat, even though Bill couldn't join. You know, when the kids are away, you know, we all played, and it was good fun.
Probably the best episode yet, and I wasn't there.
So anyway, a couple of months ago, I bought a Dell XPS 13. It seemed like a good deal on eBay. I thought it'd be a good device to have. I wasn't that impressed. I mean, I'm not. I know it's secondhand. I know it's a couple of years old, but still, it just wasn't. It wasn't that great. And the main reasons were that it ran Windows fine. It seemed to have quite a few issues when I was running Ubuntu on it. Now, Dell is a close partner with Canonical. You know, the XPS 13 is under their certified, works with Ubuntu type things. So it was just a little bit annoying to think that, well, you know, why is this audio thing doing this? Why is the display tearing like that? Why is this lag happening? You know, when, you know, I specifically got it because it's supposed to play well with Linux. I'm sure if I'd been bothered, I probably could have sorted a lot of them things out. But the battery life wasn't that good either. So I therefore I decided to sell it on to someone I knew. I've been very interested in the Windows ARM Snapdragon machines, especially the new Surface laptop. But it's very expensive. You're putting a lot of money down for what is essentially a beta product, a product which is probably going to get better, probably going to get more useful, more Linux friendly, but it's not there at the minute. But one of the things while I was going through the reviews and whatever of a lot of those devices was, you know, a lot of discussion about how good the build quality is on Surface laptops, and you know, just like all other previous Surface laptops, this new Surface Laptop 7 has fantastic build quality. And I thought, never actually had a Surface, you know, why not see what's available on eBay? Anyway, found a Surface Laptop 3. It was old, but not very old. 2019. 10th gen i5, and I thought I'd check it out. And yes, the hardware is very nice, and battery life is a little bit better than the XPS 13. Okay, so obviously now I'm going to try and put Linux onto it. This was a bit of work. In the end, Ubuntu would work with some fun modifications, with some custom kernels and stuff like that. But I just couldn't get Mint to work. You know, it was boot looping and things like that. Now, since I'd only had it a couple of days, I decided to open a return, thinking that the guy would not accept it because he'll say, "Oh, no returns accepted" or something or the other. But he just said, "Yeah, fine, send it back." So I just sent it back. I don't have the money for this, but I wonder if the next project should be to try and run Asahi. Obviously, to run Asahi, I need an M series, M1, M2 MacBook. there are some new MacBooks coming out in a couple of months' time. This is going to mean that hopefully there'll be a few more out in the used market, and it might be something I can try out, investigate. I know that uh, Alan Pope, guest, an all-round fantastic guy, he's running it on his M2 MacBook Air, and he says it's really good.
I'm
So
I'm
maybe
gonna I'm gonna point something out here that
go
you
on.
should probably do what Eric did and listen to Joe.
And what listen to Joe would be don't buy anything, probably.
No,
And
actually, I convinced him to buy that Dell Latitude that he's in love with.
Oh, okay, fine.
It is probably one of the best things I've ever had. Considering it was $140.
Oh, but at $140, anything's going to be brilliant, isn't it?
Well,
Because the
I was
price to performance value is just, and the thing is, even
Are we going to sell much at a Chromebook now?
Oh no way,
Dude,
dude, no, wash your mouth out. No, I mean, to be fair, all these other thingies that I've messed around with, that I've considering what you get for the price, get 16 gigs of RAM, 512 SSD, i7 10th gen for 250 quid. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, so, anything, if you don't like, it's just quibbles. It's not, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the thing, And I think that's one good thing, I suppose, that we've now got to, that maybe we don't have the same excellence in the same way that maybe we used to have in the past, but we've now got just a general good standard of compute power around if you want it. Anywho, my main machine is this Lenovo Yoga 6, which runs an AMD Ryzen, and I was running Zorin OS on it, maybe just for the lols, really, to be honest. I hadn't used it for a while. It's a nicely skinned version of Ubuntu 22.04, but that's about it. And now with Mint coming out and the fact that I'm apparently on a podcast called mintCast, I decided it was probably worth putting Mint on it. Now, the only thing that surprised me is that it took substantially longer than the usual 15-20 minutes it normally takes me to set up a Mint install, whether it's a dual boot or not. For some reason, Linux Mint just couldn't seem to understand that I wanted to dual boot. Whenever I'd go into the installer, it would always say, "This has got Windows Manager on it. Would you like to erase the disk?" And I'm like, "I don't want to erase the disk because it's my work computer." And then I messed a little bit around with my boot directory. I did the partitioning in Windows. Didn't seem to work. In the end, what did seem to work was to shrink the drive on Windows, but not format the space, leave it as it is. And then when I loaded back up into Mint, then the option came of, install alongside it. And hey, presto, no more installation.
as I reported in my video that I made for you.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, you don't format after you shrink it on Windows. You leave it
Yeah.
just unformatted. That
was the
way.
mistake. That was the mistake I made, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to make I'm probably going to make another video specifically for Mint now that 22's out, because it seems that one I made for Endeavor was really popular on both OTC and mintCast. And I was thinking I might make one specifically for Mint and then another one specifically for Ubuntu, because that would probably be the two biggest use cases. I would assume people that are using Fedora probably would know how to do something like that. But yeah, it's not straightforward like it once was. They just don't work as kindly together as they once did, and it requires kind of a deeper level of understanding.
I mean, it's interesting that I've never had that issue with the mainline stock main Ubuntu release.
Yeah,
it's always been something which you would think would act exactly the same. So it might be an official flavor like Ubuntu. It might be something like Mint, which is based off of Ubuntu. It always seems to. I don't know why. It's just, maybe there's some magic sauce in there that I.
Well, it's got to have something to do with the installers. because the installers all use different partitioning tools. They probably use the same thing on the back end, but the interface, the user facing tools to do the partitioning, to do the choosing where to put the operating system is all different. And that's why I was going to do Ubuntu too, because they've got that Flutter thing now, which
Yeah, true. Good point.
So
I mean, I know we're going to talk a lot more about 22 in the innards. So just quick points, just to say that it looks a lot like 21.3. It behaves a lot like the previous Cinnamon release. It's even got the same wallpapers. It's apparently got some significant under the hood changes, which I'm sure we'll get into. I'm going on a trip to India next week, family holiday, 3 weeks, lots of money, and I'm going to take this as the sole laptop. So I'll probably get some good mileage of, getting used to and seeing how it's like out in the real world. I have got this little thing of, should I just download GNOME Desktop and still have GNOME there as well? But I'm going to resist, and I'm going to continue with Cinnamon, and as the way that Clem intended. Speaking of my trip to India, I always take a couple of sets of earbuds and headphones for all the traveling that we do over these, and I have far too many of these. And I actually found out that some of the Sony ones that I've got, I could still probably get a reasonable price for. So I had some Sony XM4 earbuds and some XM4 headphones. The XM4 earbuds are really good, but they're painful in my ears. I don't know. I've changed tips. I've done this. I've done that. I can't keep them in my ears for more than half an hour, and it really annoys me because the sound is really good. And the XM4s, well, if I'm gonna get rid of one, I might as well get rid of both of them, I thought, because it's just surplus to requirements, and I've got a reasonable amount of money. Okay, not massive, but I've had them for a couple of years, and still to get 50% back, I think is fair enough. I'm still getting to grips with my NAS and using network shares. I still need to set up that Plex server, which brings me over onto media. I'm enjoying House of the Dragon, although I have a feeling the finale is going to be a bit disappointed because the lead up seems a bit rushed. As I might have mentioned before, there's this Amazon Prime India web series called Mirzapur. It's your standard kind of, gangs and violence and all that sort of stuff, like Peaky Blinders or Boardwalk Empire. This particular season wasn't as good as the previous ones, but I still enjoyed watching it. Did I mention I was going to India? I think it's the fourth time I've said it. It's going to be expensive. And so I'm doing lots of extra shifts and cases and stuff at work. And I'm starting to wonder if it's affecting my health. I worked a run of days without a day off. And then, as I said, I don't know if it's that in conjunction with the fact that we've had relatively humid weather here. I know it's nothing like what you guys got in the States, but relatively speaking, and the fact that life's a bit stressful at home anyway because my son's got a chronic condition, which we're he's getting management for it, but it's tough. And one day I just woke up with a stonking migraine. I mean, I literally had to stay in bed for another 5 hours. Could not get out of bed. And I was just thinking to myself, why? What have I done differently? And then my wife was kind of like, yeah, you worked all these days without a break. You've been coming home late. You've been doing this. You've been doing that. The weather's not been helpful, so you're probably dehydrated. So I think I really do need this holiday that I'm getting next week.
Where are you going on your holiday?
India. I don't know if I mentioned it.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
Okay, no, sure, that's fine. The cat stories. I know I've bored you all with the cat stories. We now actually have our own cat, which is our cat now. The people that we were cat sitting for have said, just keep him. And we're like, yay! Because he's a lovely little fella. He's called Simba, and I've already done the Lion King joke already by holding him up and getting someone to take a photo with the circle of life happening. But anyway, that's just a sad Disney reference. Okay, excuse everyone for the next minute and a half. I am going to rant. I will try not to rant for too long because I do realize we have a show. Okay, on Monday we had a horrific incident occur at a school where 3 young girls had been were stabbed in broad daylight. They were at a Taylor Swift themed dancing class. A couple of the adults also got injured, but unfortunately, as I said, the three girls died. They were between the ages of 6, 8, and 9. All right. By the next day, people were making massive protests about Pakis go home, England for the English. They started firebombing a mosque. They started firebombing a police station. The police, they're not supposed to, because apparently the offender, the suspect, is 17 years old, and so legally they shouldn't be named. But they did decide to name him, and they named him as Axel something, who is born and brought up in the UK with parents who've come from sub-Saharan Africa, right? And he's of a Christian background. This has not stopped, however, riots in now 9 separate cities in the UK, where people keep going along saying that, oh, it's immigrants that have done this, it's Muslims that have done this. There's a lot of discussion online about how this might be Russian bots fueling disinformation by saying that, oh, actually what the police is saying is not true. It's actually an asylum seeker who came over to the UK and he is going around stabbing our kids. And what's absolutely shocking me is it's spreading. There are now multiple marches on each day during the summer. And this country fought against Nazism, right? And now we've got them on our streets. Yeah. Now we've got them on where the guy's from or whatever is beside the point. This is racism, pure and simple. They're just looking for someone to attack, and unfortunately, me and my community is the people that's affected. My mom has been telling me not to go out into the main cities. My sister wasn't going to come home. She was going to stay somewhere else because she was worried about the crowds on the roads. I'm also very much heartened that every single one of these protests, there's another protest, which is the anti-racism people saying, Nazi scum off our streets. And in fact, in at least 2 of these, there have been more of them than of the other. And in one, there was more policemen than the protesters. And it makes me sick. It really does.
There was one report, Majid, that the mosque turned out and the imam actually came out and talked to the protesters and got even some of the most rabid of them to actually come inside the building and learn something.
Yeah. So a lot of the mosques have actually started putting on tea and some sandwiches. It's like, oh, you guys want to come in for a cup of tea? Do you want to sit down for a sandwich, maybe? It
wouldn't have mattered whether they were Muslim or not.
Exactly. Didn't matter who
they always find some group, and they will marginalize some group. And if they run out of groups, they can make up a new one.
Yeah, but that's a class act.
We're doing that here too. Yes,
that's how you respond. You say, "Look, you heard something that we don't believe. Like, that's not who we are. Come talk to us. Like, let's be reasonable here." And you know what? I've found this myself, that to Moss's point, like, there's a lot of this kind of grooming happening, I think, in a lot of ways, where people are sort of being put into categories and falling into this trap where, as a group, people are acting in a very irrational way. But my experience is that 1-to-1, people that you would think would be, hardcore one way or the other, most people are just normal, rational human beings. If you can separate them from the rhetoric, from the, and I think that's probably what you would
Mob
find
think.
anywhere. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, mob think, yeah.
So
And it's just sickening. Not that it would have made any, not that it should make any difference if it did turn out to be, I don't know, a Pakistani Muslim that had done this, because the actions of one person are not of that of a community.
exactly.
But it's not even that. It's like it's some random. He's probably got some mental illness. He's from sub-Saharan Africa, but he's born and brought up in this country. Why the fuck are you bombing a mosque for? What's that got to do with anything? It's just hate.
Because
man.
like Joe said, it's an excuse, and or maybe it was Moss. Sorry, they will find something else to push their attention to. They have to be outraged. There has to be some kind of like egregious offense, to their sensibilities, to their religion, to whatever excuse they use. But I think that's really what it is. It's not. It's like a Karen, right? It's not so much that this
It's
one specific
the only
thing
way to
happened.
define us is to hate them. And
Yeah.
there has to
Well,
be a them.
Yeah,
Mm.
right. There has to be someone we can collectively push our anger toward, so that we don't reflect it on ourselves or something. Whatever. I'm not.
It's their
psychologist.
fault I'm miserable, not
Right.
mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I take no ownership of that. Right. Yeah.
But
Anyway.
but anyway, sorry. So I just felt that I needed to kind of get that off my chest, really. So I apologize. I know I said it'd only be a minute and a half, and I took a bit longer than that. So
No, but
anyway,
I think
as
you
Eric,
did it
sorry.
in a very, very respectful, like that's about as well put as you could have made it. And I respect your family for having concern, and unfortunately people, might do something that,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Let's get back to the podcast that is allegedly called mintCast.
that's what I've heard.
That's what I've heard. It's just a vicious rumor.
Allegedly.
Yeah, and it's time for Eric's wanderings.
Yes.
With Skynet.
The Borg. I've been assimilated. So I've been finding different reasons to use AI, and cutting through the hype, and actually benefiting from these tools. But what I found is that if you want access to them, if you want ChatGPT, well, if you're going to go to OpenAI, they'll give you a free account and you can use it to some degree. You get a few posts, you get a few of the features, but if you really want to use it in a meaningful way, you've got to pay them to do it. Same thing's true of Perplexity, or a lot of these different systems are very capable, but they're also and they're very easy to use, because all you're literally doing is going to a website. But they want your money to do it, and also their privacy practices are abhorrent, as you'd probably expect. And so, in order to sort of avoid all of that, I just looked into, like, well, what does it take to run it yourself? Thinking, okay, this is probably going to be impossible, because all I've heard is you need, this massively expensive and powerful hardware. And what I really found was that that's not necessarily the case, and that there are a lot of things that have changed around that. So basically what it boils down to when I say AI is it's large language models. And these are things like, all of the major tech companies have their own sort of model. Meta has theirs, and Google has theirs, and Alibaba has one, and everybody just kind of has a model that because they have the money or the resources or the infrastructure to be able to train these models, which of course takes a tremendous amount of, compute power and electricity and, just money, essentially, to do that. And so, but what's amazing to me is that there's a huge open source component to this, where these companies will do this, and yes, they productize it. So they will take these models that they create at great expense and then put them into a product that, again, they expect you to pay for, but that they also release the underlying model as an open source project. So it's basically, you can take it and run it. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can either use a self-contained desktop application, and there's a few I've used that work pretty well. One is called GPT for All, and that's one word. The other is Alpaca, which is a play off of Llama, because Llama is one of the more popular large language models. And so that's sort of one approach to it, and that gives you a self-contained desktop application where you launch it, and whatever the resources on your machine are, that's what it has access to, and you run it all right there. The other option is something that is more of like a client-server model, which is usually like a Docker container where it's running an underlying sort of server infrastructure that gives you the ability to run the model. And then they also will have usually like a web server aspect, like a web client, where you can log into the local host and use that system. Now, in a lot of cases, those are very sort of bare bones. And what these systems are providing is actually an API. So you're running this Docker container, it's hosting the large language model file, the model itself, and then instead of needing to use their specific web client, you've got an API that you can then take a separate client of whatever kind. And there's web-based ones, there's desktop software-based ones, and you point it to the API, and then you're connecting and making API calls. And so those are the two main sort of ways to do it. And in that case, there's a llama.cpp and ollama are two of the more popular options that I found for the client server side.
The animal is called a llama.
I'm going to say llama because I'm an ugly American, and no one I know says llama. So there you go.
You know me?
That's right. Just like tortilla.
Right. Although I will say that I'm one of those
and
annoying people.
Mate.
Yeah.
It
Hey,
whips the llama's ass.
Exactly.
That's right.
Thank you.
Winamp wouldn't have got it wrong.
Yeah.
I tried.
It whips the llama's ass. Okay, fine. So anyway, I'm going to keep saying llama. I know it's technically llama, but I'm also one of those annoying people that calls it a gyro instead of a gyro. So there you go. In many cases, setting up the software is...
Yeah, that's weird and wrong, Eric. I'm sorry.
What?
It just is. Gyro. Seriously?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
It's a gyro.
Moss, what do you call it?
Hero.
It's a hero.
Okay, well, there you go.
Okay.
Not a gyro,
It's
like a
more
gyroscope.
Of a H than a G, but it's
Yeah,
somewhere
give me
in there.
2
Hero.
gyro sandwiches. I can hear them in the drive-thru right now.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
I
want a
like them
turkey
gyros. Those are good.
You ever had one of them gyros? Oh, they're so good.
Can I have a gyro
Scrape
and
the
one of
meat
those
off the
llama
thing.
sandwiches?
Okay, guys. All right, back to the show.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I hate to say it, guys. It's 4:30 and we're not even in the innards.
Hey, come on now.
It's
5:30 where I am. Yeah.
It's 10:35
All right.
where I am.
So I'm going to get through this if we can get past pronunciation and pedantic stuff. All right.
Pronunciation.
Oh my gosh. All right. So the setting up software is pretty straightforward, especially the desktop applications, because again, it's all self-contained. The more daunting side of it is understanding the models themselves. So there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of models that are out there, and a lot of it is because, again, it's open source, and people will take the base model, the llama or the whatever the underlying model is, and then they can tweak it and they can recreate it. They can add a training set onto it. So you have not only the base models, you have all these iterations of the base models, and then you have different formats for the models themselves. So like literally file formats and the way that you would run them. So you have all this variability, and they also, the reason for this, besides just because people can do it, is that you can focus a model on specific tasks. So general knowledge and chat, like what you'd expect from something like ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot. And then there's others that are focused on like software development, which is another pretty common use case, or scientific pursuits, or things like that. I could spend a long time just talking about this specific topic, and I'll tell you that if you dive into sort of playing around with large language models, this is going to be something you spend a lot of time on, unless you just say, well, I'm just going to use whatever the most popular one is and call it at that. But I really wanted to dig in and see what was available, and so anyway, there's a lot, but so the desktop applications have the advantage, like I said, of being self-contained, and they've also done something else, which is, if you remember, as I started this, my expectation was that I needed to have pretty high-end hardware to be able to do that. And the reality is that some of these desktops systems have been able to make it so that you can load the model into just standard memory and then be able to use the CPU instead of a GPU. It's much slower, and you literally see like word by word as it's being generated, but it functions, and so it's a way to do it. Now, if you have a system, my desktop is a Ryzen 5 5600. It has 16 gigs of RAM, and then I have an RTX 2060, which only has 6 gigs of GPU RAM, but it's enough to load part of the model or to offload certain slices of the model computation. And so if you have a GPU, the difference is that on a CPU system, you're literally going to see word by word, whereas on a GPU, it's going to be streaming pretty quickly, like as if someone's either typing very fast, or it's what you would expect from, like, if you've used ChatGPT or something like that. So having a GPU is definitely superior, but you still can run it on just a CPU, which I think is pretty cool, because again, this sort of democratizes it. It makes it so that people can download Chat GPT for all, or Alpaca, and be able to just run it right there on their system. The other thing that those provide is a way to manage your models. So you can go into a little control panel, and it shows you the models that are available, and you can pick and choose and try different ones, and it downloads them for you. And you can set parameters, because the other part of this is there's all of this tweaking you can do to make things run different ways. And those clients do a really good job of sort of containing all of that and making it very approachable and much easier to use. So that's, if someone was curious, I would say that's probably the best place to start. The client server options are, again, container based, usually with Docker and things like that. The main advantage is to be able to run the container on a powerful machine. And if you think about like cloud ops and like how that's basically what you're doing, is you've got a powerful server that's running somewhere else and you're connecting to it remotely. And that's kind of what you'd be able to do here. You can obviously run it and use it on the same machine, but let's say I have my desktop running it in my office, but I can then connect to it from my smartphone or something like that, because the web portion of a lot of these is, a modern stack that runs well on a small screen. And so you're creating your own sort of ChatGPT service, which is kind of cool. It's much more involved. You have to set up the containers. You have to sort of, tweak the GPU and some different things. But once you have it running, it's, I think, more flexible than potentially what you get out of a desktop app. So I have talked about like what I've done, but like, why am I doing this? Like, what value do I get out of the AI? Well, the main reasons is just functionality itself. Like I mentioned, a lot of the providers will give you a free account, and they'll give you sort of very basic functionality. They limit the number of questions you can ask or follow-ups, or and one of the things with this is, if once you get into it and you start using it, you don't just ask one question, get one answer, and you're like, okay, we're done. You tend to have this back and forth where you start from a wide perspective, and then you start to narrow down on whatever it is you're trying to do. If you're producing some sort of a body of text for an article, or you're one of the things that I've been using it for a lot lately is summarizing terms of service agreements, which will be 20, 30 pages long, and your head hurts by the time you get to page 10. If you provide that text to an AI system, it will be able to summarize it and give you just sort of bullet points. And then I will say things like, okay, well, what's their user data policy? Are they allowed to share it with third parties? Do they sell it? Do they store it? All that sort of stuff. And the data is there, and it's able to then produce that answer for you based on what you've given it. So that's very, very handy. I've also used it quite a bit for like web design stuff that I do, where a customer rarely has all of the text that they need to put on a website. So they'll give you sort of broad strokes of like, we have these products, these services, here's our about stuff, here's our, different things, if they even have any of that. But then you tend to need to fill out some other areas of content. And so this is somewhere where AI has really helped me a lot in iterating on things and saying like, okay, I don't love the way this sounds, or it's too big. Like I need to bring this, shrink this down into just a couple of paragraphs. And it actually does a really, really good job at that type of stuff. So I've been getting a lot of use out of it there. SEO type stuff, same thing. And then probably the weirdest part, and perhaps a little sad, is that I actually enjoy chatting with AI bots. You can have a pretty interesting conversation, and I know it's just predictive modeling. I know it's not like intelligence, but it is knowledge, and it understands natural language, and that's really the secret of it. Is I can have literally a conversation. It's not like a search engine where I ask a question or give it very specific terms and then just get a bunch of results that I then have to kind of make sense of. It kind of, if I'm talking about, I had a conversation about space exploration and like the validity of humans in exploring space. Is it better for us to try to do that, or is it better for us to just send machines out? And, it was a really long, protracted conversation, and it led me to thinking about things in a slightly different way, because I just hadn't considered it the way that the machine was kind of explaining it. And so, it's interesting. And there's a lot to this technology. I mean, there's certainly a lot of hype around it, and unwarranted hype. They're putting it everywhere, and a lot of those places they put it doesn't make sense. But that doesn't mean the technology doesn't have a useful purpose. And I think if you take time, or you think about like what in your life might benefit from something like that, it's actually something I think that people should look at, because the truth is that, it's not going to go away. It's probably only going to be more and more pervasive in terms of the way it's used and how it's used. And I think if you have at least a cursory understanding of how the technology works, then you have a benefit of just knowing, like, first of all, like what's it capable of? What can I use it for? How can it make my life easier? And I think that those are all good things. So anyway, I'm going to keep playing around with this stuff. It's beneficial to me, like I said, so you'll probably hear about more of it in the future. But I just want to throw out there that if you have any suggestions for me in terms of things that I'm not seeing or haven't touched on that I should probably take a look at, or if you have any questions about the stuff that I've already talked about, like, I'd really love to hear, what your experience has been. Did you go out and buy a, 24 gig GPU, something like that, where you spent real money on this? Or anyway, I just think it's a fascinating idea that you can run
Don't
it
they have
yourself.
those USB attachable burst processors specifically built for AI?
Yep. And I'm also very curious to try something like the Snapdragon X, like a coprocessor or a system that's built to process AI. So they're not quite affordable for me at the moment, but that's something I want to try at some point, because I think if I don't have to rely on a super powerful GPU and I can actually have a laptop that can do this, then I think that's going to be a better option. But yeah, good stuff. It's fun.
Well, if nothing else, I think that pretty much does it for the bi-weekly wanderings. I'll have a real tough time splitting this show in half. I'll probably do.
The show's going to be another 10 minutes.
We'll see.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I didn't think this whole thing would be that long, but yeah. Anyway, moving on.
You know what the problem is, Bill? Sorry. We need more hosts.
Oh yeah, wouldn't that fix things? More people with big personality and lots of opinions.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
All right.
So yeah, moving on to the Linux innards. So this week, as we've alluded to several times, we are many would be aware that the latest iterative version of Linux Mint has dropped, and that is Mint 22. It is based on Ubuntu 22.04 LTS, which is their latest thing, and it's sporting some pretty new under the hood stuff like kernel 6.8, which I appreciate. It's not the absolute newest, but it's pretty close up there. I think my laptop upstairs is running 6.10, so that's not far off at all. You got Pipewire and then some a whole lot of under the hood improvements. All in all, it's been pretty smooth, I think. It's not been 100% smooth by any means. Aesthetically, like I said before, there's not been many changes, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well,
No,
actually, I wanted you to go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
I haven't seen a whole lot of difference, but I haven't had a whole lot of time to really dig into anything either because of my work problems and family visiting and everything else. So when we get to the upgrade section, I'll probably take over for a little bit and talk about that. But I don't think that there's a whole lot visually that's different.
It's not. It really isn't. And like I said, it's mostly under the hood. It's mostly the fact. Well, I mean, the biggest thing is that it's based on 24.04, but it's also got the more upgraded version of Cinnamon 6.2, which apparently has been rewritten quite a bit under the hood. It's always difficult with these things to make people appreciate under the hood type fixes, and when you've done the work to do all the upgrading and that, and then you're presented with a desktop that looks exactly the same as it did before. Not everybody understands all these things that go on under the hood, but I mean, there's been quite a bit of improvements. Now this i915 kernel bug that Moss was talking about earlier was kind of interesting to me because it basically is a huge, as far as I can tell, a huge number of processors out there. And I've seen this before,
Oh, yeah.
that C state problem. I've had that before with other kernel versions, but this looks a little bit different. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Londoner found the fix. He had the problem, obviously. I had the problem on my wife's computer, and I applied the fix that Londoner used, and it worked. And so we do have that in the show notes about what you need to do. You need to sudo nano your grub file and then change it. And there's the exact stuff that you need to put in is in our show notes. And then you have to save the file, and then you have to run sudo update grub, and then you reboot.
Yeah, basically what you're adding is a couple of kernel command line options that tell the system add these commands to the kernel at boot time. And I'm looking at these commands. What it looks like to me is idle time, like a C state. That is a that's got to do with power saving when you're not using all of your cores or something like that, I believe. And I'm not sure what DC equals 0, but whatever that is, it's disabling a something on the CPU that is apparently not well supported on the kernel yet, or something. What irritates me is that when you've got a CPU that worked perfectly well on 6.7 and then 6.8, all of a sudden you've got to disable certain parts of the CPU. Otherwise,
I'm
you
hearing
end up,
a lot of people saying that 6.8 is not the best kernel to be running on this.
yeah.
But this is the only problem we've noticed, I've noticed anyhow. And thank you, Londoner, because without
Yeah.
Londoner, we couldn't do this show.
I've had these problems before in the past. I was telling the guys a while back about a problem I was having on the one machine that I take on the road with me. It's got one of the low powered Pentium quad core chips on it, and it's got a C state thing that I had to disable for a long time until finally they fixed that. But that was doing it was causing the system to completely freeze up to the point where I had to hold down the power button to just completely power cycle it hardcore, which is not the most healthy thing to do to a machine. And that was a C state command that I had to put in to fix that. So it's interesting that we're right back where we started with that kind of thing. But yeah, you got to get in Grub. If you got Grub Customizer, which I don't know, can we get that installed without jumping through a bunch of hoops anymore?
Yes. They when 2404 came out, they had to come out with a new PPA for it. But yeah, it is out now.
Okay, good. Yeah, so it's a lot easier if you just have Grub Customizer. You can just add kernel command line. It would be on the same line basically that you would put Quiet and Splash if you was running Plymouth Boot Splash, with which on Mint and Ubuntu you are. So there is that. I put down there's no new artwork. There might be some new wallpapers, but none by default, and none of the Arch Linux. Look, none of the Mint specific wallpapers have been iterated upon at all. So no new color schemes, no new GTK theme, no new cinnamon theme. So if you're in the community and you know how to do that stuff, maybe that's something that you could contribute to. Not that I'm asking for any of that stuff, because I'm perfectly happy with my system the way it is, but it's notable that none of that existed in this upgrade. So all right, what else?
And the other thing was that LMDE 6 got the Cinnamon 6.2 upgrade. I think that's significant.
Now, I do want to mention that with the pipe wire change on the machine that I was able to upgrade, I was able to install what is it, Easy Effect, with the help of Bill to get the settings correct, and I do think it will improve my audio quality by cutting out the echo and a lot of the background noise from this end, which will make the audio editing easier for Bill. So I do think that's a good improvement.
Anything about Easy Effects, and it was the same thing with Pulse Effects. Sometimes you get this random crackling in the background, and it's all caused by that. And I have no idea why it's doing it.
I think that was part of my issue when I was connecting earlier, was that I was trying to use it. And if you close the application, it's still running in the background. You have to actually quit the application or kill the process. And that's, I had done that, but I still had issues. But yeah,
Now,
go ahead.
Throughout the show, while running this, I have noticed a bit of jittering and a bit of app lag every now and again. And I'm not running anything different than usual, other than that Easy Effect. So
Well,
that
there is some
may
buffering
be
going
causing,
on.
yeah, that may be causing it for me.
And you got some control over the buffering too. Now, as to the running in the background until you kill everything, the new version of Easy Effects has got a switch which will shut down all of the processes after you close the window in the preferences, which that's actually kind of cool, because if you don't, it shows up as a bunch of like virtual audio devices and PAVU control and everything like that.
So Bill, this was kind of what I was asking you earlier when we sort of said let's wait. specifically, you had talked about for several weeks, if not longer, that you were waiting for the 6.8 kernel. And so what hardware were you having trouble with that either you couldn't use or runs better now?
I don't know that. Well, I don't know that it was a rational way of thinking all the way
Oh.
around, because the Focusrite devices have always worked because they are USB class compliant devices.
Mm.
The thing about them, though, is that there are some functionality that is hidden in the software, which was only available on Windows. And in fact, when you buy a Focusrite and you never set it up on Windows and you hook it up on Linux, it basically stays in a pre-set up state, because it identifies, it's got like a little bit of mass storage that has got its software like right there to where you can double click it and install it for Windows users, and the user manual and stuff like that, and links to some complementary software that you can get for Windows. And
Got it. Yeah.
the first time you register your device and you install the software and it updates the firmware too, that's another thing that software does. It will disable that mass storage device functionality, because it's not a usable amount of storage. It's just barely enough to put those few things that they want to put in it. But until you do that, it just stays in that state. You also don't have the ability to change the sample rate or anything like that. Does it still work? Yeah, it does. But now with kernel 6.8 and above, the kernel module has given also the ability to communicate directly with this device, and it actually knows all of its pathways and everything. You can really get in and screw these things up and rewire the paths in like a patch bay sort of thing, like Helvium, where you can, or Jack, you've got that kind of functionality where you can literally, on a software level, reroute all of the input and outputs, and depending on how big of a device you've got, like I've got a 2i2 up on the shelf, and that's a lot of inputs and outputs, and they go all the way up to like 8 in and 14 out or something like that, and it gets insane, and you can really screw it up. But you've got that functionality on there, whereas before it would just basically operate as a simple device without a heck of a lot of control. But honestly, I don't know that I'm getting any better quality out of it than I did before. I'm not having some of the same problems with like OBS Studio. This is probably more of a Pipewire thing, but OBS Studio had a pretty strange, irritating problem sometimes where it it just would not recognize an input at all, or it'd recognize the input, but it would be as though it was shut off. So you would go in and you would change that input to something else and then change it back, and then all of a sudden it would work. And I've not had that problem since we've switched to Pipewire. So that stupid stuff that has absolutely, which is almost certainly like a race condition or something like that in the code, um, is irritating, and you can't really explain it or come up with a workaround or a fix to it. So that's the kind of stuff I was really excited to see come to an end, But um as far as like functionality goes, I think I'm probably still right where I was before. Like I said, it's more on a kernel level now. I think Leo was saying in an episode of OTC a while back that we do have better quality now, um, because of the kernel module. I don't know. I've not seen yet, but that's something he believes. So as time goes on, I'll compare some of the audio that I made before and after and see see if there's any more bits to be worked with, or I don't know. I don't know what criteria I could go by to know whether or not there's been a vast amount of improvement, other than just how good it sounds, But
Right. I mean, short of any kind of like actual scientific test where it's like,
right,
you're
yeah,
measuring.
which
So
that ain't gonna happen. So
no,
Yeah.
but I mean, if you feel comfortable that, okay, I can hear it and I think it's better, or it
yeah,
functions better, or whatever the case is, then that's a good thing. So um I think some of the things they've done, again, we've talked about Mint being a sort of quality of life focused distro and ease of use, and not really changing too dramatically between releases, and obviously that bears itself out in the release notes and the release announcement. But there are things under here. I mean, obviously the tech stack going from 2204 to 2404 is probably the single greatest thing. And you think about the amount of effort that goes into rebasing on a new LTS. I'm sure that's the lion's share of what they did, and why there aren't so many visible changes. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that makes sense that they would focus their time on that and make sure that they're not like, doing harm in that respect.
Londoner pointed out that there are 22 new wallpapers, so he doesn't know what this no new artwork thing is.
well, like I
Maybe they
said,
mean,
there's probably new wallpapers, but they're not like. First off, I didn't get a new wallpaper when I installed fresh out of the box,
mhm,
which if there was new artwork, it defaults are king, and
yeah,
I'm sure he's right. And if I look in here, change desktop background. Yeah, okay, so you go into the Wilma folder, and yes, there's a bunch of new fancy looking pictures. I'm not one for pretty pictures in the background. I guess I'm too industrial. I like the Linux Mint stuff, So
Yeah, I go for more landscapes than industrial stuff. I don't know why everyone likes these jagged edges all over the screen, weird colors. Joe, didn't you have some problem with updating it on your machines?
Yeah, I know the notes say 2 machines, but I actually looked into installing it on 3 machines. The first one was my garage computer, and, the whole thing with that was my audio bookshelf was not compatible with the upgrade, so it would have not upgraded that or not kept that, and I would have had to completely reinstall and redo everything on that, and I'm tired of doing that with audio bookshelf. So for now, that's staying where it is. Um, my other 2 machines would be this laptop here that I'm currently on. Um, I did the upgrade on that, and I also did the upgrade or attempted the upgrade on my little, netbook here, the 1GX. And now both of them hung during the process. One was frozen completely, and the other one sat there doing absolutely nothing through an error, and just I could still move the mouse around and everything, but nothing else I did anything. This machine right here was an easy enough fix, because when it when Cinnamon came up, there was no taskbar. I was not able to launch the terminal using right click or anything like that. But I was able to do Control Alt F4, which forced it down to the command line, and then do sudo dpackage tac configure tac a, and then sudo apt install tac fix tac broken, and then the standard sudo apt update, apt upgrade, and then the apt auto remove. I put that all in one command and let it run. Took a really long time, but it did finish, and things were working again. And the first boot took a long time, but things sped up a little bit again after. Now I have had to reboot again since then, and I did notice a bit of lag in the starting of Cinnamon. I'm not sure what the issue is there, but, everything is running as it should be for now. Now on the 1GX, well, for some reason, I had pretty big issue installing the Linux generic headers for 6.8. And I tried the fix that I had done on the previous one. I tried completely purging 6.8 and then installing again, and it just wouldn't do it. So it would not finish the upgrade. But it did change a lot of my apps, and then I ended up deleting or doing an auto remove, and that removed all of those apps. And then so none of my apps were installed, and I could not finish the upgrade. So thankfully, the Mint upgrade tool forces you to do a time shift update before you can do the Mint upgrade. And yes, I use the Mint upgrade tool on both of these machines just to test it out and see how things went. And I was thinking that I would have to do a full wipe and a clean install on this. But at this time, I was able to use that time shift to go back to like mid-July or something, and do an update from there. And so that one's currently running 21.3 again, and it's doing just fine. I did some of that, during the show because it's been a really long show so far. And I may do a fresh install of 22 just for the sake of doing a fresh install on 22 on this device and maybe on my Dell Venue 11. I think for now, doing the fresh install is probably the way that I would go for most machines for upgrading to 22. But that's just me.
You know, it was interesting. You was talking about that upgrade tool. I've seen like 3 updates to that Mint upgrade tool in the past couple days. So I don't know what's going on there.
Hmm.
And I remember hearing some talk about that before, or right around release date. Something to
Well,
do with the Mint upgrade tool was having a problem or something like that. So
on this device, I was actually running 21.2, and then I used the Mint upgrade tool to go to 21.3, and then I used the Mint upgrade tool to try and go to 22 because you have to kind of go in that order to
yeah,
get the upgrades. So the 21.2 to 21.3 worked just fine. The 21.3 to 22 didn't.
Okay. And you're using the graphical upgrade tool?
Yes.
Okay, I ran everything from the terminal because I'm weird. I guess when I started on this show, I would have run nothing from the terminal, but so I'm
well, look how you've
changing.
grown. That's
Such a good little boy. Yes. So yeah, I ran Mint upgrade from the terminal because it was just easier to do than try and figure out how to get that stupid GUI to add in the tools and whatnot.
I don't even know what the terminal command is to go from one major release to the other.
Mint upgrade.
Mint upgrade.
Sudo Mint upgrade. But
Yeah.
I ran sudo Mint upgrade and it kicked off the graphical install.
Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I was just
Huh.
getting ready to say.
Well, I did sudo. Let's see. Obviously, sudo install Mint upgrade. Sudo apt
Right.
install Mint upgrade. That Well, eventually it kicks out the graphical, but it doesn't kick up the graphical that's included in your Mint update.
No. It's a separate thing.
Yeah, it's its own graphical, but
Yeah.
It
And so
didn't used to be, but
this actually begs a question for me. I always remember back in the day, Clem was always of the type that nuke and pave when you're putting a
Yeah.
new when you're putting a new install. And I know since then they've done a lot of work in in the upgrade system and all this kind of stuff. But it still seems, whether it's now by accident or design, that really they want you to nuke and pave.
I think that's always going to be the case with any Linux distribution, just because so many things come and go, so many configurations come and go over
Yep.
the course of the life of a machine, and you build up so much cruft, and it's always going to be better to nuke and pave, for that
Yep.
reason.
The amount of complexity that you have to deal
Yeah.
with as a developer to think of like, okay, what could they have done here? And some people will reuse their home folder for multiple boots.
Yeah.
So like I don't do that personally. Like I have all of my stuff on a separate drive for exactly that reason. I used to do that. So to have KD stuff in there with GNOME stuff, and it was just an awful mess. And some things would step on top of each other. And yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, and I maybe that's not their typical user, that is dual booting and stuff, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, if you're using a system for long enough, you're going to build up cruft. And when I hear people say, "Oh, I've been running the same distro for 5 years," I think, man, like the amount of stuff that must be in your home folder is just, all of the dot files and everything that are in there has got to be an absolute mess. But I guess some people like it. Just
I mean, if you never change anything and you're
yeah,
only running
exactly.
a very, very basic set of applications, I suppose. But for people that do any tinkering or trying things and then going and trying something else and you uninstall it and it leaves things behind and you've left behind libraries and dependencies and all this stuff that you don't need
it's a config
anymore.
files, really.
Yeah. Oh man.
Just a mess. So let me, I know we're running a little long here, but I want to talk about what I think is the most sort of, I don't know. I think this is problematic personally. I think it's the most sort of, the biggest change in the whole thing. And you could say maybe I'm being reactionary, but I think this whole hiding unverified flat hub listings is, I think it's kind of silly and irresponsible. I get the intent behind it, but I would understand it more if it was something that actually happened, that you'd hear about, like, oh yeah, there was a malicious package in FlatHub and, somebody installed it and they lost their, like that. I heard about it in Snap with that wallet, the crypto wallet thing from earlier this year. And I've heard it, but I have never heard anyone say, oh yeah, there was a malicious flat pack. And 100,000 people downloaded it, and if only it would have been a verified thing, or if only we'd filtered out unverified. Like,
so
I
it's
just feel like
it's very interesting you made this point, actually, because in a video by my Nick on My Linux Experiment, he said that this is what we call in French, and I can't remember the French, but the translation was a bad good idea.
yes,
In that,
that's a great way of putting it.
In that, when you look at it from the outside, yes, by having only verified apps available on that app store, then you're basically saying, okay, look, these are the ones which are official and they've got proper maintenance behind it. Okay, fine. But when all you have to do is toggle the switch to get the unverified apps.
If you know
and
that.
If you know that, true. And once you do that, obviously there's a lot more other applications you can download. However, none of those have or are allowed to have any reviews or any comments or anything like that. So you might have a flat pack of I don't know, Spotify as an example, right? Someone has made a flat pack of Spotify. Now, initially it won't show up. Then when you do, if you do tick the box and it does show up, well, how do you know it's any good? Because often you do look into the comments and the ratings and stuff like that. But they've just said, no, anything that's unverified, you can't comment on and you can't put any numbers on. So now you really have no idea whether this is some just a one-man band in his room setting something up, or it's actually something which has got a bit of a community behind it or whatever.
Let's go back. Let's go back to the idea that, you have a small team of developers or a single developer. They're creating code. Their primary focus is on developing their software, not packaging it necessarily. Yes, that's part of it. But, you've got all these different formats and, oh, why isn't there a deb package? Why isn't there an RPM? Why isn't it on FlatHub? Well, you know what? If someone takes the initiative, and this is, I think, the part that would piss me off the most, is if I take the initiative. Like, I've been using the Inkscape flat pack for, I don't know, four years, maybe longer. It's not an official verified package, but somebody has taken the time to keep it up to date, to package it, to have it on FlatHub for me. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that they took the initiative. I appreciate that they spend their time doing that. And basically, the Mint team is saying, oh, well, screw them. Who cares? Who gives a shit if they, spend their time, making life easier for other people by putting this software up there? There's no malicious intent. There's nothing that they're doing that is like, because it's unverified somehow now it's less than, just because some developer took the time to verify something. Like, yes, of course it should be first party. Hopefully every developer would see the value of using Flatpak at this point. It's only getting bigger. It's not going away. And hopefully that, maybe a change like this forces their hand, because it's like, well, shit, we don't even show up now. Someone tries to search for the software and we're not even there.
And it's interesting because prior to you bringing this up, I thought, well, this is really just kind of important, so we could talk about the fact that, just because, and let's make this clear, just because a flat pack is not verified does not mean that it's not a good flat pack. Because let's be clear about some flat packs here. The Audacity flat pack is unverified. The OpenShot flat pack is unverified, and there's so many others.
What would you say the percentage of software that's verified versus like 20% verified, maybe?
It'd be interesting to know, but the fact that there's no mechanism now, because there was comments for all flat packs before,
exactly,
and that's
my point, that if you have stuff and you label it, it's unverified, and then people below it say, yeah, works rock solid, works absolutely fine, been developed, this, that, and the other, 5 stars out of 5. Those are the ones it's more important for you to have comments and ratings for than the so-called verified ones. So
because that's
really,
the metric I want to go by, is how good of
a piece of software is.
People, what kind of luck are you having with it?
Yeah, and so as I said, it's a good bad idea. It sounds good, but actually, when you dig into it, it's actually it's not, number one, not fixing the problem, and number two, actually making things a bit worse for the user.
Yeah.
So it basically means you can't take the initiative and take that piece of software that you like and use and make it into a flat pack that is hosted on FlatHub, that then is enjoyed and useful to a lot of people. You're doing a good thing and you're being punished. Now, think about the way that repositories work on, or PPAs or any of those things. Yes, there is always a possibility. And we saw it with earlier this year, where someone did the long con and they was able to sneak in, backdoors and things to a well-known piece of software. Of course there are ways for people to game a system or to subvert something. But the idea that you just say, well, if you're not verified, it's not, it has no value, is just ridiculous. And the thing is that there are keys, right? So if you think about a repository, like, you're allowed to make commits, GitHub, like, you can make commits to something. If you're a known person, you have an account, your account is in good standing, you are able to log in and verify yourself. Maybe that's what Flatpak needs, or FlatHub needs, is that you're not the developer, but you're a known entity. You're someone that they recognize as being a packager, because software packaging is a thing. You're not a developer necessarily, but you're taking the package and you're making it available in a format that benefits the users, whether it's the local repository, whether it's FlatHub, whatever. And again, the use of FlatHub is not going down. It is only getting bigger and bigger. You're seeing projects like all of the immutable distros are counting on FlatHub and Flatpak as the way to distribute their software. It doesn't seem fair, and it seems really stupid and short-sighted. And to your point, Majid, like, it's a bad good idea. It's just, and the fact that they just disable it by default, and I come in as a user and don't know any better, and then I don't have access to Inkscape, or the one that I have is 10 versions out of date. I mean, it won't be now because it's, they just rebased on 200404. Anyway, you can hear them. I don't usually get heated about stuff, but I think this is kind of shitty, personally.
That's a good point, Eric. Joe Londoner had a response for you on your update problems. I put that in the show notes. Says, as per the documentation, if you upgraded from 21.3 to 22, if successful, you should then remove Mint upgrade. When the tool is done and the upgrade is successful, uninstall it and reboot your computer.
Well, if any of them had been successful, at the
There is
time,
that.
yeah.
Okay, well, I
But
thought
thank you,
I'd bring that.
Londoner.
Yeah, we can't do this show without Londoner.
Oh God, no. So, all right, it's gotten so bad. Majid is doing the circus wheel thing. So, let us know. Right into the show. Send us a boost. I mean, right into the show. Let us know what you think. Have you upgraded? What did you do? Did you upgrade in place, or did you nuke and pave? What was your experience, and how do you feel about this flat pack thing? We don't want to be. We're kind of riding this delicate balance of not being absolute Linux Mint shills, but at the same time, we have to be honest about how we feel about some decisions that are made, especially when they're decisions that, not everybody is going to know their way around. So let us know what you think, folks. But if we don't have anything else on that, I think we can move on to vibrations from the ether. And there's none. So yeah, write the show. Let us know what you think. Anyway, moving on. Check this out. And this is another, again, Londoner. This is a cool tool. I installed this, and this is how I found out about the problem with the Audacity app image. This is an honest-to-goodness tool for managing your app images, and it comes as a flat pack. Does anybody else think that's funny?
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. But
Definitely.
Irony, hey? Hashtag irony.
Well, because
but flat what is it? Flat Seal comes as a flat pack too, and it does. I mean, it allows you to adjust all the
for flat.
At least it didn't come as a snap, because that would have been just ridiculous.
Right? Why not have an app image that controls all your app images, as opposed to having a flat pack?
What's the meme? Yo, dog, I heard you like app images, so I put app images in your app images. Whatever. It's been we've been recording too damn long now.
We have. I got a headache. But yeah, I think the previous tools that we had for managing app images, for those of you who don't know, of the universal package formats that we have, app image is one that is a bit more closely related to the .exes.
And see if we got any beef, but I think all we got is turkey. I need 2 pounds.
I need 2 pounds of beef.
Oh, I'm not muted. Whoop daisy.
Okay, where was I? The app image was more akin to the .exes that you had on the Windows side, where you could just run something portable, basically. It is portable, but it ain't. I mean, it does still need some stuff that's on your system, but there's no installing anything. Both flat packs and snaps are somewhat siloed off, but there's still something that has to be installed. App image is one file, and you put it somewhere, and then you make it executable. Well, with this tool, all you got to do is download it, and then this tool will put it into a bespoke directory, and then create a menu entry for it. And I think it even handles the updates for it. I'm not sure how it's managing that, but yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So does no one else uses App Image Launcher?
I tried it once upon a time, but then, and it worked for a while, but when I tried it recently, I couldn't get the App Image Launcher to launch. So,
okay. I've been using it pretty successfully, so that's the only reason I asked, was because I wasn't sure.
No, my favorite thing about this
option. Sorry, go ahead.
My favorite thing about this tool is once you're done adding it to this tool, it automatically puts it in the start menu as well.
Yeah.
So,
which is what App Image Launcher does. A lot of the same things, but it doesn't have an active UI like this where you can see what you have installed, be able to manipulate them. Basically, the only way it integrates is if you right click on something that it created a menu item for, you can say remove from system.
Okay,
So
guys, we started talking about this, but we didn't name it. It's called gear lever.
Gear
we
lever.
did.
Gear
I
lever.
I thought
We
we
did
did?
did.
not hear it brought up. We just started talking. Oh, well,
Oh,
this new tool.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think you got up and went to the bathroom when I
I
said
did
it.
not.
Yeah,
Not at
he
that
went to the
time.
bathroom right there. He didn't have to get
At
up.
any rate, it's in Flat Hub.
Yeah,
And
and
it's called gear
it's got a
lever.
button here, check for updates. It manages all that for you. So go check that out. There is a link in the show notes, and as we said before, the show notes are linked in the show's description, and it's on our website. So, and then there's one more entry that just popped up magically on here. Tell us all about this, Moss.
I didn't do it.
Could have
That
swore it was okay.
There are actually 2 lines of it, and I changed it to 1 line, and I brought it back up into the show notes, but I did not put it there.
Yeah, so I put this in there. This
Here we
is
go. Found it.
just because we've been talking about NASes for the last couple of weeks. It's come up a couple of times. Came across this article on how you can possibly turn an old phone into a NAS. And to be honest, it's not a particularly interesting thing, but I just thought it fitted in with some of the discussions we've been having. So yeah, check that out.
You got to really, really love Android to make
Or
it.
have a whole lot of access to, old phones that
Yeah.
have just been sitting in a drawer for a really long time.
It's true, though. A lot of these devices, they've been very powerful, capable devices for a long time now, and it kind of sucks to throw them away. But,
Right? You got an old Note 5 sitting in a drawer somewhere doing
Yeah.
absolutely nothing,
which
and
I
a couple of
absolutely
old
do.
hard drives just sitting around. There you go.
So
Moss is like, get this over with already.
do a little dance, make a little love. All right. Anyway, that's it for
Finish
that.
him.
Housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us an email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram and Discord, or post directly at mintcast.org. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Sunday, August 18th, 2024. There's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Next roundtable live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, August 10th. And there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Next roundtable live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, August 24th. And there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. Wrapping up. Joe, where can we get more of you?
Well, you can catch me on a couple of my other podcasts. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which is at tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, which is linuxlugcast.com. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org, or you can buy me a coffee on Ko-fi. And, most of those shows, Eric is also on. So, Moss, where can we find you?
Well, I do Full Circle Weekly News every week. I'm occasionally on HPR. You can email me at moss@bodielinux.com. My Mastodon is at zyvla@hosttux.social. And what about you, Bill?
Well, I'm a Mintcaster, so you email me at bill@mintcast.org.
Yeah, that's his only podcast. He's not on any other one.
It's the only one with a... Oh, no, that's not true. Bill_H on Discord, at WCHauser3 at fostodon.org on Mastodon. Yeah, and also check out those two other shows. Boy, it's been a while, hasn't it? Linux OTC and 3 Fat Truckers. Links to both of those in the show notes. Majid?
Hi, I'm Majid. You can you can email me at drmajid@mintcast.org, at atypical_doctor at atypical_doctor at mastodon.social, atypical doctor on Instagram and Threads, and the Atypical Doctor podcast at Spotify. A podcast on Spotify, and I'm also on Linux OTC. I might not be around for the next couple of weeks because I'll probably be in India, and I've just been checking. This podcast would be at 3 a.m. in the morning. So,
And you should probably wait to message him until after he's had some sleep. I mean, the man looks dog tired.
He does.
Yeah.
Go on, Eric.
We mean that in the best possible way. We worry about you. All right. You can hear me on hear or see me on Distro Hoppers Digest and Linux OTC, as well as the Linux Saloon and Linux Lugcast streams. I can be reached by email. See, Bill, I'm a company man at eric@mintcast.org.
Way to go, Eric. Before we go, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. I just
Bill, and Londoner.
Just love reading my own name out and gratification to my
Basically, basically this is the Bill and Londoner show, and we are just the glamorous assistants.
Yeah, so I do the audio editing. Archive.org for hosting our audio files. Hopstar for our logo, InitRD for the animated Discord logo, Londoner for our time sinks and various other contributions, most other contributions actually. And I do the hosting of the server, which runs our website maintenance, and the Nextcloud server on which we host our show notes and raw audio. I guess that's probably the best way to say that. Last but not least, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Clem and Co.
And Co.
Whoever Co is, yeah.
And Wrap.
Okay, lads, I need to leg it because